we're going to start with this guy. This guy is a guy by the name of Mens Repala. Mens Repala is the CEO of Ishikone Corporation. Now, obviously, there's a lot of stuff goes on in the past, and we might have to talk about some stuff even further back from this. But today, we're going to start the journey of this man, Mens Repala, because I think that by understanding Mens and his contacts and his agenda, we begin to unravel the largest conspiracy in New Eden, potentially. He has contacts all over the place and has been working tirelessly to his own agendas. And so I want to discuss this in terms of three different parts. Okay, there's three kind of chapters to this story. The nice thing about Mens Repala is that he largely comes out of nowhere in history. This begins with a guy named Otro Garyushi. This guy. Otro Garyushi is dead. He actually died during Malin disaster.
Yet these tombs call out to us. All the heroes and villains vanquished within cry out at once, begging for justice.
This is the events of the Empyrean Age book, okay? There is a bunch of New Eden news and stuff that surrounds this exact moment. They published a whole bunch of stuff. This was in 2008, but this is not a story about the Empyrean Age. Now, when we've watched this trailer before, which again, we've watched it multiple times, we usually focus on this moment here, right? We focus on this moment right here in which Jamil uses her super weapon to destroy the Thucker, the Elder Fleet, right? We talk about that a lot. Yeah, there is New Eden news about the Malin disaster, but we're going to focus on this moment within the story. Right here. So in this, let's talk a little bit about what happened here, okay? So there is a drug, or rather there is a toxin, there's a virus, there's a mutagenic nasty thing that the Amar use to infect their slaves. One of the ways that they control their slaves is by infecting them with this thing called Vitok. Okay, Vitok is this nasty, nasty stuff. It's mutagenic, it's difficult to pin down, and it basically makes the Mimitar addicted to it. Yeah, it's a drug. But then there is an antidote that was being developed, known as Inserum. And while this antidote was being kind of developed in cooperation of various different forces in play, the main person who had the antidote was the Ishikone Corporation, and specifically Otro Garyushi. Now, there's a character in the Empyrean Age known as the Broker. The Broker is this very spooky guy. So we have the Broker. This guy, bunch of names. Any of these could be the real name of a man who uses them. His best known alias is known as the Broker. Mentions the Broker to any governmental agent within the world of New Eden, and you'll be sure to get a response. The only thing more numerous than the numbers of aliases he's known by is the number of speculations on his background. There are precious few concrete facts about this elusive spy, negotiator, informant, arms dealer, and manipulator of men and state. As a master of disguise who utilizes the latest in cloning and DNA technology to keep his appearance a secret, such basic details as race, height, color, hair color are unknown. However, he's often considered to be either of Amar or Gallente ancestry. There's this character called the Broker, and he meddles with things. And so in the story of Empyrean Age, he basically, on behalf of the Amar, tries to purchase the Inserum antidote to get it squashed, basically, to make it so it can't come to market. And in the end, Otro Garyushi, the head of the Ishikone Corporation, refuses to play ball with the Broker. And so, by the way, huge spoilers for both books in this discussion, just so we know. In the end, the Broker kills a famous admiral within the Gallente Navy, and then basically hijacks his identity to be this Nyx pilot outside of this major negotiations between the Gallente and the Caldari for peace. And so there's this big peace meeting going on, and the broker, as Alexander Noir, crashes the Nyx into there, killing Otro Gariushi. And this is how Mens Repala begins to get power. Well, obviously this makes it so upheaval within the Ishikone Corporation. So Mens Repala, before this, what he was is he's basically he's the head of the Ishikone Watch. So he's basically one of the head people of security within Ishikone. Again, prior to this moment of the Melkalin disaster, Mens Repala is basically not mentioned, which is extremely useful to us. I've went back to before Empyrean Age and its time and the book of the Empyrean Age and all that stuff, looking for any clues of Mens Repala or Ishikone Watch specifically doing anything to kind of show his operations beforehand. And there's really nothing. Mens Repala is a character that gets brought into the story at this point. So with the death of Otro Gariushi, Mens Repala steps in and actually uses his own fortune and some other stuff to buy up a whole bunch of the shares of Ishikone, helping stabilize it as it's going into freefall, and pretty quickly becomes the CEO of Ishikone. Now, he has an ally. This is Mila. She is the secret sister of Otro Gariushi. And so she was very, very principal to the rise of power of Otro Gariushi. Don't worry about it right now. We're not even going to worry about the contacts between Otro and the Garistas and all that sort of stuff. We don't even need to worry about it right now. The only thing we really need to worry about when it comes to Mila is the random piece of information that that Otro Gariushi's father's name, the Garistas pilot that Otro is the son of, was named Velamo. Now, that'll be relevant in a little bit, but we'll get there in a second. So, today we're going to go over the events of Templar 1. Okay, Templar 1 was basically the third piece of story that Tony Gonzalez wrote. We have Theodicy, which is, I've done a full reading of Theodicy. You can find that on my YouTube channel. That is the story of basically the events leading up to the Battle of Vakatioth between the Amar and the Jovians, which is the trigger point for the Mimitar rebellions. And so it introduces ideas like the Elders and whatnot. And then we, of course, have Empyrean Age, which we've been talking about a little bit here, which was a critical piece to the introduction of faction warfare and kind of where we're at right now. And then his third book, Templar 1, is an exploration of the development of clone soldiers, not just Empyreans, not us pod pilots in space, but foot soldiers, immortal foot soldiers. This is the new technology, okay? And that is what the book is about. But the book has multiple threads, okay? There's multiple different stories going on, as most books do. And so today we're going to slice through the Empyrean Age and go over the parts of the story that involve Mens Repala specifically, because he has his own story. I would argue that you could make a movie off of just basically, if you wanted to make a movie of Templar 1, you should probably make Mens Repala into like the main character, even though there are a couple of other arguments for other characters. But we're going to treat this book as if Mens Repala is the main character. So we're going to go through it scene by scene, what's going on, and kind of what we can learn about Mens and what he's up to, and how all of this stuff comes together. Now, the big thing about Empyrean Age, though, or not Empyrean Age, Templar 1, the thing that I found the reason why I'm less prepared today than I should have been, the reason why I keep like spinning my wheels on this, is I coming back to a question of when does Templar 1 take place? And I thought that this was going to be a simple question. But it is not. It is not a simple question at all. I've pegged it to some specific moments in time, thanks to the story. Well, let's talk about what point in time this is. So in the book, the Templar 1, President Rodin is president. And actually, you know what? We're going to talk about when it takes place later. Let's just talk about the events for now. So we begin our story in chapter 3 of the book. Chapter 3, you can see at the beginning of the chapters at the very top here, it has the Ishikone logo. This is a common thing throughout this book. It shows you the message, or basically it shows you the topic, the person, the group that is the focus of this chapter. I just want to read the beginning here because it really is a great introduction to Mens Repala as a character. By the way, the man does nothing for the Guri allegations. Just look at him. I mean, trust me, especially in part 2 and 3, we're going to go full tinfoil conspiracy when it comes to how much influence Mens really has. But in order to get there, we have to establish what power he has. Okay, so here we go. A fleet of Ishikone warships emerged from Warp just outside of their headquarters station. Turning in unison, aligned with their hangar bay, the untrained eye may have suspected that these menacing vehicles just returned from the Glente Federation border. In truth, they are escorting their CEO on a routine business, who never traveled anywhere without bringing intimidating firepower with him. He flew at the point of the pack, inside of a pod of a Raven-class battleship, immortal and powerful, but by no means impervious to harm. Ishikone Chief Executive Officer Mens Repala, one of the most influential figures in all of civilization, has withstood the pressures of being responsible for 300 million people fairly well. He was building a formidable legacy, having successfully guided Ishikone through one of the most tumultuous periods of Caldari state history. 2 years ago, the assassination of his predecessor and closest friend, Otrogoryushi, has left the megacorporation on the brink of financial default, and with it, the very high probability that many of Ishikone labor commitments would shift to purely military obligations under the dictatorship of State Executor Tybus Heth. So here we go. Now I get to watch as my entire theory unravels live. 2 years have passed since that event. That actually, now I do need to jump into this. Because, so there is, okay, great. So that still makes things probably fine for me. We'll get there in a minute. So this first scene opens with him leading his flight of ships, and it really sets the tone of what kind of story or at least what kind of story it's trying, it is presenting itself to be, which is basically your classic, 90s father figure is overworked because of his job and trying to wrestle and balance work and home life. That's really what the story of Templar 1 is for Mens Repala. Is the story of a father trying to balance his work life and his home life to great tragedy. So that's really the story that we're looking into here. And so it opens up with this moment that's very reminiscent of like a 90s, like almost like a Liar Liar, one of those movies where effectively Mens is traveling with his escort, fleet to something pretty important potentially. There's a conference meeting with some other people. He's been called here, so he's coming here in order to deal with just Ishikone business, right? And he gets a phone call from his wife, and he says, "Lauren, I told you I can't be here. It tears my heart out, but if you knew what we're discussing." "Your heart? What do you think it's going to do to hers?" snapped the wife. "You need to hear what she has to say in person. For God's sake, Mens, she's close to walking away from you for good." So again, this very much like, I'm sorry, I meant to make it to my daughter's birthday, but we're just too busy right now. Except for it's not a birthday. His daughter needs to talk to him about something. His wife calls him to try to get his attention. And he's like, "I can't do that. I've got too busy. This is too important of a meeting. I'm so sorry. I gotta go. I'm sorry." And he hangs up. He says, I can't be in two bloody places at once. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that." She goes, "I understand perfectly. You can't be here to look after us yourself. Why bother when you can just hire muscle and tech? You're more obsessed with protecting yourself from a ghost than you are at spending time with us. Face it, Mens, Ishikone is more precious than your own family." So we can already see, they're putting out in the front, this is the central conflict, okay? Mens Repala was the head of security for Ishikone. He's now taken over Ishikone because of the death of Otrogoryushi. He's managed to stabilize Ishikone, but he has two main enemies, and he's obsessed with them. The first being, of course, the broker. Now, nobody really has heard from the broker up until for a little while now. That's not necessarily a good thing for Mens, and we're going to talk a little bit about the fate of the broker later. But it is true that he's chasing after this ghost, the broker, this mysterious person that people know about, but nobody really knows about. You know what I mean? But his other enemy is Tybus Heth. Tybus Heth thanks to the help of the broker, has taken over the Caldari state and sculpted it in his image, right? The state was originally designed to be a collection of mega corporations that combine together through the chief executive panel in order to rule the state. But Tibus Heth steps in, basically accuses the other systems of being weak, gains absolute power, and forms the Provost Directorate. So he basically unifies the Caldari state under his control, and he is now the undisputed commander of the Caldari state. He then demonstrates this by invading into Luminaire, securing Caldari Prime back for the Caldari people, and placing the Titan Shigemoru in orbit above Caldari Prime in order to show the power of the state and secure Caldari Prime for the Caldari people. And so he's done that, and it's shown his power, but like he is continuing to reshape the Caldari state and its policies and its laws and its, procedures in order to maximize his power and punish his enemy. He is transforming it into a full-on fascist regime, okay? Or at least, and pretty much he has by this point, right? But we see, actually, just prior to that conversation, leadership for months, the mega corporation lost hundreds of thousands of lives. Workers were activated for military service and sent to die anonymously in an ongoing war with the Gallente Federation. For Menz, who was running the security arm of Ishikone at the time, this was a senseless disaster he knew Otro would never have allowed. With support of his investors, Menz bet his entire personal fortune on taking an ownership stake on Ishikone. That's what we talked about here. The strong-arm tactic impressed the board of directors, which, like Menz, was growing weary of direction in the direction in which Heth was leading the Caldari state. So we can see that there's this push for the mega corporations to try to gain power back from Tibus Heth, but they are not doing very well. And overall, Menz Repala becomes one of the main people who is part of this whole effort as the CEO of Ishikone. Yeah, a Caldari guy not balancing work and life. Yeah, no, seriously. So, and then Menz worked tirelessly to salvage the fortunes of Ishikone. He swam against the populist tide of those who believed in Heth's vision and centralized economy. You can see other news about this as time goes on. We see these posts about, Menz Repala bringing this together, making good deals with the Gallente. There's a lot of news about that during this time period between Empyrean Age and Templar 1. He recalled Ishikone supplied troops and equipment from a war he felt served no good purpose from the state, let alone his mega corporation. And he did it all with a brave face. Ishikone today is a better state than it was in 3 years ago. It had, despite Heth's near constant efforts to sabotage Menz, finally turned back into a profitable corporation. By all accounts, Menz should have been proud, but all victories come at a price. In truth, his success was killing him, and for those who knew him best, it seemed like a matter of time before the weight of Ishikone would crush him completely. So here's the thing, and here's the tension that's here at the beginning of the story, okay? Yes, he's trying to balance work-life. He's apologizing to his wife and his daughter because he can't be there right now to see his daughter. He's going to have to get there later. They want to meet up with him in person, but he's too busy going to this other meeting because it's really important Ishikone business. Deep down inside, he knows he wants to quit. That's the whole thing, is that he wants to quit this. He already does, and that's an important piece to this. Going back to the conversation between him and his wife, you can see it's such a classic, like I said, it's the classic father trying to balance work-life, right? Like he's talking to her, and you can even see that he has difficulty flying while also arguing with his wife, right? He says he throttled back the warship just outside of the station's bay door, halting the entire flotilla in its wake. Oh shoot, where is it? Yeah. A lapse in concentration made it the 99,000-ton vessel that his command veered to port. Menz quickly corrected the Raven-class battlecruiser course, but not before his cruiser escort turned high and wide to avoid collision. They're like, you can just see the father angrily driving down the highway, arguing with his wife on the phone, and then swerving to accidentally get into an accident or whatever. It's very much that, but very sci-fi, right? Does it say battlecruiser? Hold on. No, it says battleship. I said battlecruiser. No. So it says Raven-class battleship's course, but not before his cruiser escorts. So he's being escorted by cruisers. He's in a Raven, which, by the way, there's a whole thing about the Raven and Otro in the first place, but we're not worried about Otro today. We're worried about Menz. He throttled back his warship just outside of the station bay doors, halting the entire flotilla. A staggering amount of money has been spent developing an elite counterintelligence unit for Ishikone. The team's primary purpose was preventing Heth's provosts the political enforcers of his government party, the Caldari Providence Directorate from infiltrating the organization. But they have halted dead in their tracks many attempts of espionage from their corporate rivals as well. Ishikone had become a black box to the rest of New Eden. Secrecy, its prime directive, had become ceaseless search for a man known only as the Broker. By far, there was no graver threat to the megacorporation's security. The Broker was responsible for the murder of Otra Goryushi and made threats to Otra's sister, Mila, as well. Men's Repala was the only man who knew where Mila was, and that made him a target. The Broker's tireless vendetta against Ishikone was because Otro had the audacity to defy him. The Amar Empire used a mutating virus called Vitok to control its legions of Mimitar slaves, and Otra Goryushi gained possession of an antidote called Inserum. The drug was priceless. The Empire would pay any price to squash it from existence. The Broker offered a king's ransom in exchange for the formula, but Otro refused to sell it, and the decision cost him his life. But even that was not enough for the Broker, who vowed to strike down everything that was dear to him as well. There has been no trace of the Broker for years. If there were any other man, this would have been enough forensic evidence to convince any police agency that he was indeed dead. But that is exactly what the Broker wanted his hunters to believe. He could be anyone, and thanks to cloning technology, several people at once. Yeah, the Broker's absolutely willing to break the one body, one mind law. That is demonstrated in Empyrean Age. Worst of all, he had the patience of immortality. When the time was right, even if from decades from now, he was bound to strike. So Menz is trying to protect Mila, he's trying to protect his people, etc., from this threat of the Broker, while still leading this effort to undermine and take down Tybus Heth. There's a lot on this dude's plate. But remember, he's the head of security for Ishikone. His defining feature is his paranoia. We read, since Otro's death, Menz has placed a barrier around his family, literally surrounding them with so much physical and technical firepower that even a state-sponsored military effort would have trouble penetrating it. And even then, it might not be enough. The strain of being surrounded at all times by weapons and prying eyes was reaching critical mass. It was a maddening paradox, because the more evident the security measures, the less secure everyone felt. Yet it was all that Menz could do to protect his family, and it was more than anyone else could provide. But it was still a life of fear, for which Lauren Repala meant it was hardly a life at all. And he says, so she says that, because this is, remember, she just accused him of putting Ishikone's more important to him than his own family. And he says, that's not true, and you know it. And she says, prove it. Your daughter needs assurance that her father is going to be there when she needs him most. This is one of those times. You can't hire someone else for this. And so he says, please, and then show us you're not a selfish bastard. And then it hangs up. And now he has to go to his meeting, right? Okay, great. So he's balancing this stuff. He's balancing it poorly. He needs to talk to his wife. You know, he's paranoid. He's trying to protect his family, but that very protection is ostracizing him from them. And so he walks into this meeting and he gets a report from his counterintelligence chief, Anton Markov. Pursuant to the passage of trust by the CPD, Heth has deployed provosts to each of the megacorporations to perform detailed audits of financial and military assets. Despite our refusal to participate, provosts appeared at our station of Kurama, demanding access to classified data cores. When the techs refused, the provost threatened them. The security was called in. In the resulting scuffle, one of our guards was killed. In our own facility? Yes, sir. So Provost moves in to do their investigation. There's a scuffle. There's a fatality between the Ishikone security and the Provost Directorate's team. The trust stood for transparency, for unity, and strength, a controversial bit of legislation passed by Heth requiring more disclosure from megacorporations about their activities. On the surface, this act was beneficial to investors and equitable for state-controlled institutions such as the Caldari Navy, which relied on corporate fundings. Most people believed it was just the continuation of Heth's unsubtle efforts to consolidate his grip for power. So what is he going to do now? Yes, sir, the guard's neck was broken in the fight. Ishikone Watch arrested all provosts and wanted to bring capital murder charges on the one responsible. With your approval, the CPD already warned us not to do that. So basically, there's this fight. The Ishikone Watch guards kill one of the provost guys. Other way around. Sorry, the provost guys kills one of Ishikone Watch's guys. And so they arrest the provost guys. And so the CPD, Heth's guys, warned them to not do anything about it. And now they're going to Menz and say, what do you want to do about it? And Men's response says, of course they did. So what they threaten us with now? He goes, Sir, he doesn't know, muttered Ralishi Okimo. Now, Raleigh is a very important character to this story, too. And he's one of the only important characters that I do not have a picture for, because apparently they haven't thought to put him in the EVE Galaxy Conquest game yet. But he's another major character in this whole story. Raleigh is actually a very close friend of Otro and Mila. Raleigh is, well, we'll talk more about Raleigh in a minute, but Raleigh is the chief technical officer of Ishikone and basically Men's right-hand man. He says the truth, or he says the kind of the inciting incident of this entire story. I'm sorry to be the one to have told you this, but the State Science Academy has formally revoked your daughter's enrollment, citing our lack of participation in the Trust Act. And that's the moment in the movie where, like, the music stops, there's a heartbeat, and Repila starts to realize that he can't protect his family from Heth. He might be able to protect people from the broker, but he can't protect them from Heth. And more importantly, this is what his daughter wanted to talk to him about. This is the thing that he had shoved off to the side. And this really hits him. Like, oh my God. Like that tension of like work versus home suddenly comes into tight focus right away. They made a scene of it. Bastards literally pulled her right out of class in front of everyone. The same exclusion criteria will likely be applied retroactively to all Ishikone residents. Heth is using the example of your daughter to send a warning to others. I'm losing my family for this, Men's thought, lost in a trance as he stood among colleagues who were helpless to do anything except for avoid looking at him directly. The only thing I could have given her to make up for my absence in her life was this institution, where the best minds of Caldari science and culture is gone. She'd open that door by herself using her own smarts and work ethic. All I had to do was hold it open for her. Instead, I slammed it in her face, for Ishikone's sake. So, again, very smart girl, earns her way into the most prestigious college, but gets cut out of it as punishment for Ishikone's insubordination for the provost's demands. The CPD will use this leverage to free their provost and force our compliance with trust. Thousands of Ishikone civilians are enrolled in programs there. Strategically speaking, they're taking tomorrow's intellectual capital away from us. As of now, the press is unaware of these events. So here we go. We have these guys arrested, but the leverage that they have over us is control over access to the academies, which is access to higher level learning, and will be critical to Ishikone. This could be devastating to Ishikone long term. Men's, there's no wrong answer here, and so, in the words of his own wife, haunted him. Show us you're not a selfish bastard. He makes the choice, put Ishikone over himself, which means putting Ishikone over his family, and he says to charge them. All of them. They'll face a judge here in Ishikone Court. Unless they've been bribed, our magistrates will convict them, post heavy security around the holdings location, including extra warships, send a very clear message that we're not taking this any longer. And the press? When the story breaks, tell them a version of the truth, but leave my daughter's name out of this. Meeting adjourned. Keep me informed of CPD's reaction. So then they put up a electronic counter, basically jam all of the recording systems, and he tells Raleigh that he needs a fast, stealthy, and undetectable ship. So there's this whole process about him now escaping. There's a convoy leading here in an hour. Take a shuttle from Sigma 2 in the unfinished deck level. Construction drones will see you aboard. Don't be gone longer than 6 hours. And then Raleigh says, she doesn't need that damn school. I'll teach her myself everything that she needs to succeed. Raleigh's just trying to be a good friend, man. Like, hey man, this ain't that bad. This isn't that bad. We can get through this. We can deal with this. Don't worry, man. I'll help get you through this. Just don't freak out. So the question is, where is Men's going to go within this? He has a 6-hour window of time. Men's considered letting his wife know that he would be delayed, but then thought better of it. He's not going to see his family first. So where is he going? Well, Raleigh knows. He says, tell her that this old friend says hello. This next part is basically the cover-up of how, they spoof all of the biometric data, the cameras, all that kind of stuff that basically identifies Mens Repula, giving him an alibi of where he is, plus the ability to get out unaccounted for. And so he gets out. So it says, the convoy itself, 20 ships long, was comprised entirely of Mimitar constructed vessels, a popular choice for freight companies doing business with Mega Corporation, given the attractive cost and performance of its haulers. Mens would leave with that convoy as an escort, broadcasting an ident signature that registered him as a non-capsuleer. Upon arrival to the next port of entry, Mens would set course alone on a dangerous journey some 40 star systems away, the Geminant region. Hidden there among the searing stellar winds of the Mulmir Nebula, he would find Mila Giryushi and inform her in person of his intent to leave Ishikone for good. So again, Mila Giryushi, sister of Otra Giryushi, and the person who helped orchestrate the rise of Otra Giryushi and manage the Caldari, or the Ishikone Corporation. She's been hiding in the Mulmir Nebula in the Geminant region from Heth. And so he's traveling there to tell her that he quits. That's the first chapter. We jump to chapter 9, Geminant region, F-TAC ZNNG constellation, system UBX-TAC-CC, the Mulmir Nebula, Inserum production factory. And we get introduced to Mila. So Mila's hands move with the precise control of a surgeon, delicately placing a microserver the size of a grain of sand into position. So she's basically performing robotic surgery, right? And it says, a brilliant performance, the drone patient commended. You have the skills of a machine, albeit a slow one. She accepted the smug directness of her AI companion as a compliment. It had been 3 years and counting since her last physical interaction with a human being. A large insect-like drone with triangular-shaped head and large dark eyes on its side emerged from the shadow and offered the thorax plate cover for its patient. Smaller drones climbing up the walls and ceilings look up with curiosity and seems eerily genuine. But we can see here, you can finish up, blah, blah, blah. Though they each differed in appearance and function, they all responded to the same name, Velamo, who was programmed to protect her at all times. Mila developed a friendship with them, and together they sought to learn all they could about the cruel universe she left behind. So basically, Mila has gone into hiding after the events of the Empyrean Age, and she has the support of an artificial intelligence that basically operates a swarm of drones at her complex. And that drone swarm is known as Velamo, which again, remember, is named after her grandfather, effectively, at this point, right? Because it'd be, because Mila would be Otra's sister, so Velamo would be both of, it'd be both of their fathers, right? Yeah. So their dad, so this AI is named after their dad, and we do get information at some point here that Velamo, I believe, was developed by Raleigh. Okay, so this is kind of all these people are very, very interconnected. So an unregistered Wolf-class frigate just emerged from warp outside the perimeter. Who's the pilot? Ident scans indicate that he's the Ishikone CEO, Mens Repula. Mila felt an emotional surge flush to her cheeks. The antenna of a smaller drone swiveled in their direction, registering the sudden change in her biorhythm. We cannot verify unless we take him into quarantine, Velamo cautioned. Shall we proceed? Yes! God, yes! So she's very excited. Careful, Velamo warns. Our foe wears many disguises. Mila is super stoked to run into Mens again. She doesn't know what he's here to tell her. So we see him dock. Mens noticed grill-like serrations of the metal surface that moved and undulated with chaotic movement. Velamo appeared to be harnessing the energy of the nebula itself, using its adaptive intelligence as a way to find and thrive in this hostile environment. So basically this nebula has all of this stellar gusts and gas inside of it that's messing with various ships and facilities, but because Velamo is this adaptive artificial intelligence, it's basically not only created this safe spot for Mila, but has begun to adapt to its very environment, gaining power and whatnot from the solar phenomena. Once Mens was removed from the pod, a pair of menacing spider drones, each bearing pincers as long as a man's arm, gathered up his carcass off the grating as he retched containment fluid from his lungs. They warned him that the blood was going to be drawn for genetic analysis, with or without his consent. Fortunately for Mens, he passed their test. So Worth noting, Men's is a capsuleer. That ends up being important for a couple points in time in this story. The last time he saw Mila in person was the harrowing moments following the death of her brother. It had been Otra's final wish that Men's rush her to this forsaken sanctuary, where he and a good friend, Raleigh Rashi Okaimo, had built it in complete secrecy. As senior officers of Ishikone, they had made many elements over the years. The construction was prescient of them. For now, it was sheltering Mila from both the broker and Tybus Heth. Those two were responsible for Otra's murder, plus hundreds of thousands more in one of the worst atrocities in history. Where exactly Otra has acquired the technology to build it all remained a mystery. Eerily similar to rogue drones, these machines could assess, learn, and adapt to all conditions necessary to serve their primary purpose. From this hidden lair, Mila was able to follow the events of the past 3 years from afar and to search for ways to track down her brother's killer. Despite her isolation and absence from the spotlight, there was little that Mila didn't know about the Caldari affairs, especially about the megacorporations. She never stopped grieving for Otra, but her plan had given way to a cold, ruthless determination to set things right in Ishikone. This was a rare instance, personal revenge and the greater good aligning. Vengeance was not just for her, but for the entire Caldari state. Mila stared at her trusted, beloved friend, to whom he shared countless memories. They, Otro, Raleigh, Men's, and a select few others from their inner circle, were a family in all but name. Their bond was unbreakable. Besides Raleigh, no one understood her better than Men's Repola. So there we go. That's the beginning of the conspiracy. We have Mila, Otro, and Mila, Raleigh, and Men's. Otro's dead. That is the beginning of the conspiracy that we can lock in. She's so happy to see him. The first thing she says to him is, "I could kill you for coming here. We took necessary precautions." Did Raleigh approve of this? Men's gave her a thoughtful look. He never said one way or another. I didn't tell him. She's very excited to see him. She couldn't be certain of how she would react seeing anyone after such prolonged solitude, let alone him. Remember, it's important to note, before we get too much further into this part of the story, Men's is married, has a daughter, thrown out there. "Why have you come here?" He says, "I'm stepping down. I came here to tell you in person." Silence pervaded. Spider drones gathered at the door behind him, and the smaller specimens huddled behind her. The sadness on her face crushed him. "Have you told this to anyone else?" she finally asks. Men's shakes his head. "Ishikone is destroying me. Your brother was a much stronger man than I." She forced herself a smile. He would disagree with that. "I've prepared a list of possible successors," Men's continued, eyes glassing over with pain. "Raleigh will assume executive command until you present your recommendation to the board." "I'm sorry." Mila told herself to focus. "I know Heth threatened your family," she started. "He's a coward. He recognized that you're a danger to him." "Look at me," Men said, regaining his composure. "Do I look dangerous to you?" "I mean, a little bit. You've always been hard on yourself," she says. "I won't bother telling you how much Ishikone needs you, or how much respect you've earned among your peers and the people that you've led. So you tell me, what can I do to convince you to stay with us?" So Mila is very much like, no. We can't lose you. We have to stick together. And so he just responds, "I need your help. I can't do this by myself. Help me run Ishikone." And she simply says that she cannot do that. "You know I cannot do that. Not yet." "We can't run from the broker forever," Men said. Remember the exchange with his wife? "At some point, we have to take a stand." "Forever is exactly what he has that you and I don't," Mila answers. "Until we know for certain what becomes of him, this is the way things have to be." "Heth has unchallenged support," he says. "It's just a matter of time before the cards fell." It was true. Clever politics has turned the other megacorporations against Ishikone, isolating them from the spoils of war and the resultant economic windfall. Men's fought bitterly to keep Ishikone out of conflict that his predecessor would never have endorsed. What he never counted on was Caldari State faring so well in the fight. Entire systems had been taken from the Federation. Their armed forces were among the most feared in New Eden. The Caldari flag still flew over the ancestral homeworld of their origins. Even those who had opposed the war from the beginning could no longer argue that it was costly. In fact, the Caldari State had profited handsomely from it. It's worth noting that Empyrean Age released Faction Warfare, and at the very beginning, Caldari did very, very good in faction warfare. Now, obviously, Inferno turned things around, and so, the Galente had about half a decade to a decade of, conquest and power, But at the time of this book, as well as the current days, the Caldari have been doing very, very well in faction warfare. And therefore have been gaining a ton of territory and has been very popular for that. So Tybus Heth remembered exactly who had and hadn't offered their support back when the outcome was less certain. Ishikone was now the unpatriotic, undeserving, uninspired example of restrained Caldari politics that the state could do without. A 180-degree turnaround from years earlier when it was Ishikone setting the example for everybody else. Otra Gariushi died trying to prevent a war he believed would be in the state's undoing. Instead, it had become a shining example of how unrealized the state's potential really was. Otra was attempting to stop things escalating into war. His death was part of the events that led to the Emergency War Powers Act and the war becoming explosive using the Capsuleers as proxy, which went really well with the Caldari. So technically speaking, as of the time of this story, it looks like Otro's attempt to prevent the war was a mistake for the Caldari. The war has gone very well for them. Mila, we're that close to losing everything. You're better at this game than I am. The CEOs would listen to you. I can't return. Until I know how to learn how to destroy them, this is where I hold the line, the secret base. I've given Ishikone everything, he says. They're going after my family now. I can't do a goddamn thing about it without your help. The rapid unison of metallic clips, 2 spider drones advanced within a meter of where he was sitting before the echo of his shout subsided. But he was unfazed. This is a passion he could no longer repress. I'm sorry for raising my voice, he said. I shouldn't have come here. There is another way, Mila said quietly. A moment of clarity stuck in her mind sought solutions to the impossible. It's so risky, I'd almost rather not share what it is. What risk is greater than doing nothing? Mens, she said softly, these are the highest stakes in the game. If you go down this path and fall, no one can help you. Oh shit, what's her plan? We've taken big risks before, and I'm almost out of things to lose. Mila took a deep breath before saying a name. Oriitsu. Hatakan Oriitsu, the ex-Caligota CEO? She's practically Heth's pet. That's only what the cluster thinks of her. I know this woman. Otra and I consider her one of the most dangerous persons in New Eden. Heth was right to go after her first, but he should have killed her instead. He thinks that he can keep her on a leash while exploiting her intellect. Nothing that woman does is an accident. Trust me. If the media says she's willingly orchestrating deals on Heth's behalf, you can be certain that they benefit her personal agenda in ways no one else but her can know. And what agenda is that? The same as mine. To remove Heth from power. So a mutual enemy makes us allies. And that is where we get introduced to Hakazotsu. Now, Hakazotsu is a spooky, spooky girl. If that introduction, if that discussion about her wasn't clear, there is a chronicle. We're not going to do the full reading of this chronicle, but there is a chronicle called Wild Earth that took place before these events. It's the events that lead up to this, which basically is a negotiation between Hatakan and Tybus Heth, where basically Heth continues to try to get stuff out of her, get cooperation out of her, and using his various, influences of bribery and coercion and, imprisonment in a way. And she has this wonderful garden that she maintains. And a lot of her stuff involves like allegories between her garden and, there's an allegory between her tending her garden, like the actual garden, and tending the Caldari state as a garden, right, in this story. So that's Hakazotsu. That's the plan. Mila sends him to go find Hakazotsu. A very deceitful ally, but she knows something that can protect Ishikone from Heth. Who knows what she'll ask for in return? That's the risk. What is it? Heth's spies learned of an Amar, have found a way to use Empyrean technology for infantry applications. They think that they're close to testing the first human prototypes of immortal soldiers. So this is the secret. This is the thing that Hatakan has that could help him overthrow Heth, which is that the Amar have been secretly working on immortal clone soldiers, and Hatakan knows about it, knows something about it, which allows now Mens Repala to learn something about it before anybody else does. That's the plan. I thought so too, but But if you knew how many agents died to bring Heth that information, you might reconsider. They also know that Heth knows. The Amar have acquired a decisive edge in modern warfare, and Oryutsu knows where to find it. The same technology that keeps you impervious to harm in space can now do the same on the surface battlefield. Heth would be developing it himself if he knew. He found out by accident, Mila interrupted. He was more interested in the super weapon Empress Jamil used to vaporize the Minmatars on Mechios. Instead, his agent stumbled upon this. But Fool doesn't think that he needs it. He believes too much in the Caldari military instead. You're saying Heth had a chance to get this technology and passed? More likely it is that he thought it wasn't worth the cost of trying to steal it. Menz, this is how you protect Ishikone from the mega corporations and the provost. Whoever owns this technology will dictate the terms of all negotiations forever. You're certain he knows how to get it. These drones are capable creatures, she said. Velamo has been watching her for a long time. Raleigh designed him well. See? Raleigh designed Velamo. If you trust him, then you should trust the information that his creation is providing. But not knowing what Hadakan Oryutsu would ask for in return was something else entirely. There was no way to know if the information she offered was actionable. That was the greatest risk by far. Hadakan is not someone to cross. You must honor the terms of any agreement that you reach. Exiled or not, she is one of the most powerful CEOs in the Caldari state. Don't underestimate what she is capable of. I won't. Then I'll arrange for you to contact her. Don't try it yourself. Heth will know immediately. Understood. Thank you. And then, they have some close moments together where he betrays his family even further. They kiss, and then they do more. Jumping forward again, we come back on chapter 17 in the Vassala system, Planet 5, Moon 15, Ishikone Corporate Factory, Temporary HQ, Sovereignty of the Caldari State. Raleigh sat beside Menz in a darkened room, manipulating a volumetric construct, moving the controls through the air until a spectrogram appears. The star map was hovering behind it, tracing the source through a series of points ending on the planet Matthias. The communication channel opened and began broadcasting. Menz Repala, Hadakan Oryutsu said. You haven't aged well at all. The voice of the former Calichiota CEO reminded him of a coiled viper. She couldn't even see his face. And this was a voice-only transmission that was encrypted, dissected, and bounced through several dozen star systems to hide its origins from eavesdroppers' reach of governments and megacorporations. There was no subtlety with her at all. She had opened the conversation with a vicious jab at his public setbacks. She's saying, you don't look too good, even though she can't see him. So she goes, Mila and I have so much in common. You would think that she could hold a conversation longer. Then again, maybe we both just prefer solitude. You're a bright fellow, she continued. You know the risk I took by speaking with her, and the risk I'm taking right now? That implies that you're rather unconcerned for my well-being. He reminds her that you've taken the necessary precautions to protect yourself and this conversation. He's saying, hey man, if there's a risk, it's you. If you messed up, maybe there's a risk. But I have been assured that you took proper precautions. So now it talks about the fact that she's actually surrounded by guards. An avid horticulturalist, she'd spent her spare time looking after an overwhelming collection of exotic plants, housed several open and enclosed greenhouses throughout the grounds of her former estate. Even before Heth sought her counsel, she would spend long hours moving between them, happily getting her hands dirty and very often talking to her plants as she worked. The guards considered a peculiar habit for someone of her stature, with Heth regularly drilling her during exhaustive planning sessions along with members of his cabinet. Her garden visits have become even more of an outlet, a place for her to vent her frustrations to a leafy and debatably attentive audience. It was harmless behavior, the provost reasoned, provided it kept her sane. So she's sitting there talking to her plants. But then it goes on to explain, with so much exotic flora to marvel at, the large species of creeping carnivorous plants distinguished by thick, large petals growing throughout the grounds were almost unremarkable. Occasionally one would clamp shut as insects flew towards its stigma, the sound of their flapping wings registered by the millions of microscopic trigger hairs lining the petals inside. Once trapped, the victim would be slowly digested and its constituent nutrients transported through a complex root network which could extend for many kilometers. With the right biotechnical engineering, these plants could be converted into a surprisingly effective listening device, which is exactly what Hadakan Oryutsu had done long before she was imprisoned on her own property. So the idea is that there's this carnivorous plant that has all these little hairs that function like listening receptors, right? It picks up sound of like insects and stuff. So she's hooked that system up to through biotech engineering to make it into a listening device. So now she can just talk into any of these carnivorous plants, and it gets picked up by her systems. So she's able to talk to people like, say, not Orchogoryushi, Menzrepala, without anyone noticing, because to everyone else, it just looks like she's talking to her plants. This is the kind of lady we're talking about here. Of course I've taken precautions, she scowled. You wouldn't have contacted me unless you had something juicy to offer. So what the hell do you want? Information, he answered. Mila believes that you have knowledge of a certain prototype Amar technology. I need to know where to find it. She was right. What do I get in return? We have a mutual friend, Men said, careful to avoid saying anything that could directly imply treason against the state. He still didn't trust her. So I'm prepared to offer my assistance in mediating your current relationship. What kind of assistance? The plan that he and Raleigh discussed rolled past the augmented vision. We've analyzed the circumstances and determined a compromise is possible, he said cryptically. In addition, we believe that there are others willing to lend support. You expect me to hand over the most coveted technological advances in New Eden for exchange for speculation? Here's what you should know. Heth has been meeting with his generals for the past 6 weeks to discuss Ishikone. Is that not the reason why you're asking me for help? If you're so serious about protecting your responsibilities, then you better get serious about an offer. She calls it his bullshit. He's kind of trying to play around, tap dance around the issue, and she goes, no, Heth is coming after Ishikone. That's why you need me. Get real about your offer. So then he says, fine. What do you want? And she goes, I want Heth's reliance on me to be absolute. I want him to have no allies left, no one to trust except me. And you're going to make that happen. I'm not sure I understand you. The cabinet members of the Province Directorate conduct strategy reviews every week. These are Heth's closest people, all handpicked by him personally. Without their loyalty, he is nothing, except for you, Men's Finish. We're not in that kind of business, Hadakan. You are now, she growled back. Ishikone has become Caldari public enemy. I know it, you know it, so what are you prepared to do about it? Watch it wither away and die? What would Orchogoryushi have to say about that? What are you asking for, exactly? Ishikone is supplying materials and personnel for a new research outpost on the planet Myoklar, which is where the next directorate meeting is to be held. You will replace some of that personnel with a team I provide. See to it that they are delivered to the site ahead of the meeting. And how will they get out? Not your concern. All I want is for your dropships to take them in. Menz took a moment to consider this. This was highly unusual. He was making it too easy. All the exposure was on her, not Ishikone. Just like that, he had regained all of the power in negotiations. The dropship could be remotely piloted in, for instance. Whatever cargo and personnel she planned on stowing aboard could be screened. There was any number of different ways to insulate Ishikone from whatever she was planning. So he says, I accept this term. He says to the widening eyes of Raleigh, now you have information for me. The New Eden system, very close to Point Genesis, she answered. A research vessel called the Significance is near there, with a scientist on board named Marcus Dror. This guy. You won't be able to scan down his ship. He'll see you long before you see him. What does he have that I need? He invented Immortal soldier technology. No one outside of Sorum's circle knows this. Only us and Heth. Why Point Genesis? I don't know. But let's just say I recognize exile when I see it. So he's being sent to the New Eden system to go meet up with Marcus, who is the guy who invented Cologne soldier technology in Empyrean Age, or at least, well, he's been part of this whole thing since Empyrean Age. But he, later on in the story, spoilers, he's the guy, for those of you who know this story a little bit, he's the guy who meets up with that the Jovian talks to and tells him the secret of the other and all that stuff. So that's Marcus. We're going to get to them. Then we have a deal. Yes, we do. Don't screw this up, Menz. That wouldn't look good for you at all. And speak up next time, Raleigh. It's not your style to keep your mouth shut. What did I just get us into? He asked. Raleigh says, nothing that we wouldn't have to deal with sooner or later. Despite my opinion of the woman, Hadakan is right. We don't have many options here. No, we don't. That's become a regular theme in my life. Your visit with Mila. So then Raleigh says, your visit with Mila. I hope you haven't done anything to add to your burdens. Menz avoided eye contact. He was ashamed of himself for what as it was. We all miss her, Raleigh says, getting up. I'll start thinking about Hadakan's offer and how we can find Marcus Yor. Thank you, Menz says. Don't thank me yet. Not until we see how this all plays out. That's a very ominous thing to say. So Raleigh and him meet with Hadakan, and they have this plan. So now they need to go to the New Eden system to find Marcus, but then also they're taking this shuttle to the planet of Myoklar. So there's an Ishikone base on Myoklar, and there's going to be this meeting there. And so the idea is that they're going to be delivering this payload for Hadakan. That's what's happening here. It's worth noting, this chapter doesn't end here. It actually, it jumps back to Men's, and he keeps going as he meets up with his daughter. But there's actually this very interesting in this chapter aside. You know, a lot of the times the chapters, especially in the first part, each chapter is like one section of the story. But this one actually has there's two sections of this chapter that are both about Men's. And in between those two sections, they insert this Concord file on Moria Mordu, the head of Mordu's Legion. Yeah, he did. Yeah, Marcus also made the Terran superweapon usable. Thankfully, the Terran superweapon's now destroyed, but we're not there yet. Or, well, by this point, the Terran superweapon is destroyed. I don't know if they know that, though. Either way, this Mordu's Legion post talks about how remote neural scanning of Moria Mordu during agent encounter detected trace evidence of degenerative encephalopathy. Although a deeper scan is necessary to confirm the founder's outward personality is consistent with patients suffering from the onset of psychosis. This revelation, combined with a history characterized by remorseless bloodshed and mercenary trade, supports DED consensus that Mordu's Legion is currently among the most dangerous and influential factions in New Eden. The interest of upholding the mandate, Thanatos has granted permission to interfere with any Legion activity that could potentially destabilize the nations under Concord's jurisdiction. To that end, the agent also reported several actionable intelligence items. There's the whole thing about Corvin Lears. We're not worried about Corvin Lears for this story. But the second note, Thanatos has also learned that Mordu has been in contact with Hadakan Oryitsu, deposed Kalakiota CEO. Since then, he has been preparing a mixed squad of soldiers, assassins, and technicians in mock raids on a fake research outpost consistent with Ishikone contractor design, suggesting that a raid somewhere in the Caldari state is imminent. Thanatos has been ordered to learn the target of the raid, determine the extent of Hadakan's involvement with Mordu Legion, and find any connection to Ishikone, and assess the dangers to Tibus Heth and the Caldari Providence Directorate. They're fucked. They're fucked, guys. Concord's on to them. Concord knows that Hadakan is working with Mordu's Legion. Mordu's Legion has been practicing raiding Ishikone science facilities, and now Mens Repula is supposed to be depositing some payload of people and equipment to an Ishikone laboratory for the sake of Hadakan in order to stop Tibus Heth and his power and like basically kill everybody in his council. So that's what's happening. We jump back to Men's as he finally gets home to talk to his daughter. Men's emerged from the security checkpoint on home aboard Ishikone HQ station and found his daughter sitting alone in the living room. Old family vids were projecting from the entertainment center, bringing back fond memories. And again, we're just such a traditional, like, you could see this be a movie, right? Each of these scenes feels very like they've made a movie out of it. So he comes into the room, it's all dark. The only lighting really in the room is these projectors that are showing memories of them as a family. But there was little else about the living space that fit his own idea about what a home should look like. Instead of welcoming homestead decor, his wife has opted for a stylistic elegance more befitting an elite class to which they belong. He hated it. He always had. Between its coldness and all the security, knowing that powerful weapons and an omnipresent AI was always nearby, his home was just a military bunker in disguise. He takes a seat next to his daughter, looking at the images. He saw a much younger version of himself playing with Amelie, tossing her in the air and catching her, zooming her through the park like she was a flying superhero. Her giggles were absolutely contagious. Men's caught himself smiling broadly, just as he had back then, at his daughter's delight. So we take this moment to let him be a father. Again, this is a story about a father trying to balance work and home. She wants to leave you, Amelie says. She hasn't told me that, Men's nodded, still looking at his memory. Not yet. You would have to make time for a conversation first. I know, Ben said dejectedly. Amelie, I'm sorry about the university. That's horrible. I'm sorry I wasn't here for you when it happened. It's not your fault, she answered, standing abruptly and crossing her arms. Besides, it gave me the closure I needed. Lauren used that exact same mannerism whenever she was uncomfortable, Lauren being his wife. Amelie looked very much like her mother, sharing her slender build, piercing eyes, and high cheekbones. She was a beautiful young woman who could excel at anything that she had tried. Men's wanted to ask what closure that she wanted. What closure is she expecting? I fooled myself into thinking that there is something normal for us out there. A life that didn't require armed guards. Some place that I could befriend people without having them background checked or interrogated. A life where I didn't need to be watched by machines and strangers all the time. You can understand that this is a girl. She's the daughter of the CEO, now CEO, that only is now CEO because of the death, the murder of the previous CEO. Surrounded by security, she can live no normal life. To her, being kicked out of the academy is just the last piece in a long, ongoing struggle to even have a place in the world, to have anybody to relate to, given her position. So this finally allows her to break that tether and give up the dream of being a normal person at a normal academy. We didn't anticipate this. Your mother and I fell in love years ago, but our careers, I know what happened. You grew apart. It happens. Whether or not it was inevitable, I can't say. But these crazy circumstances certainly didn't help. Millions, and so now he's defeated, right? He's at the mercy of his daughter. So his daughter then now gives him a little bit of support, trying to give him some direction. Millions of people depend on you. How can anyone grasp what that means? You're a mega corporation CEO. I can't relate to anyone because of that. When I was in the academy, I would hear conversations about vid stars, dating gossip, fashion, all stuff I should be interested in, right? Like a normal person would. But then I'd come home to discuss about national security and mega politics. It got so tiring trying to relate, I just gave up. Most of them are so self-centered, so insulated from things that really matter. I can't understand them. So Men's is very focused on what he has cost Amelie. And Amelie is trying to explain to him that that life was never for her. He hasn't gotten it yet. He says, Amelie, I'm so sorry. How many times have I said it now? I blame myself for this mess, but I have the means to shelter you from it completely. We can hide you in plain sight, use technology to change your identity, even the way you look. If that's what you truly want, I can make it happen. He still thinks that the answer is to try to give her that extra life. He hasn't gotten what she's trying to say yet. And then she says, but what about the broker? And if not him, what about Tybus Heth? And now what? Maybe the entire Caldari state as well? We're going to find a way to stop this, Men staggered. We're not going to quit. And I'm not saying that you should, she answered. I'm proud of you, Dad. Proud to be your daughter. Sometimes I think Mother resents me for supporting you so much. But if it's going to be us against everyone else, we need to be closer. I want to be more part of your life. I have a right to take an active role in protecting myself. It's not that I don't trust you to do that. It's just that this is much more personal now. I hate the people who did this to us as much as you do. So if the state won't let me into their damn universities, then you're just going to have to teach me everything you know. Men's bottom lip was quivering. Was it possible to love someone any more than this? Her message is, I'm your daughter. It's us against them. I don't need you to protect me. I don't need you. Well, I mean, I don't need you to give me some facsimile of a normal life. My life is being your daughter. The daughter of the CEO of Ishikone. Let me fill that role. That's her question to Men's. That's her ask to Men's. That's what she wants to say. Not, hey, I can give you this compensation for what you've lost. She just says, hey, let me in. Let me be part of this. Because I'm done with that normal life. And then she asks one other promise. But please, I want you to try one last time to work things out with Mom. So I can have closure in that part of my life as well. I will, Men's promise, one last time. So the big thing, she wants him to let her be more active of a role in everything, but also, more importantly, try to make things work with Mom, with his wife. Let's do this as a family. That's her goal through this story as Amelie. So then he receives a message as he is talking, as he's hearing this from his daughter, learning about his daughter probably for the first time ever. The true nature of his daughter. He receives a message from Mila Garyushi. Hadakan provided the details of your conversation. She supplied logistical infrastructure for the op, which I have forwarded to Rally. I cannot overemphasize how critical it is for you to honor your side of the agreement. If there is anyone more determined to rid the cluster of Tybus Heth than us, it's her. She will stop at nothing to achieve this. Don't underestimate her. I also warned you that Velamo suspects that she's working directly with pirate organizations without consent or awareness from Heth or the CPD. It is no secret that Ishikone has cordial relations with Mordu's Legion, but you know how damaging it would be if it was suggested that the Garistus or Serpentis cartel was directly involved in Ishikone's affair. Cover your trail thoroughly, mens. I would be remiss if I didn't admit to thinking a great deal about your visit. I am very sorry that it happened, but I have no regrets either. I am ashamed of myself, in spite of my sincerest wish that it would happen again. As yours always, Mila Garyushi. So again, the plan is in order. Things have been put into play. Logistical supplies have been locked in. There's questions about working together with different pirate groups. They specifically mention Mordu, which we know that Hadakon is in connection with. So now we jump quite a bit of time into the future, I think. Corvin is already with Mordu's Legion at this point. So yeah, chapter 28. Yeah, so we're getting pretty close to like the exciting parts of the book at this point. But as far as Mens is concerned, he's on his way to Genesis. Okay, so we join him as he enters into the Niarja system, which at this point still exists as part of the main New Eden cluster. Entombed in the vicious grave of the Starship capsule, Mens Repula took note of the starship's surroundings, panning the camera drones for maximum optimal coverage. There's all these different ships. He's like, oh, Amar love gold. It seems fitting that they controlled the system of humanity's origin and the Eve Gate itself. Mens tensed up as a pair of Imperial Navy frigates approached. Cruising along the length of his ship, no doubt they passively scanning his cargo, which despite Raleigh's assurances to the contrary, Mens was convinced would lead them to interdiction. Instead, they flew away, gingerly moving to the next ship that blinked into its local time space through the gate. Are you through yet? Raleigh asked unexpectedly. What happened to keeping quiet? Mens growled. Oh, I was just kidding about that, said Raleigh. Why, nervous? So he's talking to Raleigh. Raleigh's not with him. He's communicating with Raleigh, but he's piloting this ship. And he's flying a Providence, the Amar freighter. So he's going super slow. Your comms aren't routing through the gates, Raleigh said. We're on a secure fluid router. And Amar Customs, your ident tags read as belonging to Holder Laris Fayed, a reclusive historian and avid collector of antique war vehicles. So again, all this, they're using fake identities. They're disguising themselves as just an Amarian freighter pilot. The technology that Raleigh could throw together on a moment's notice could impress even the craftiest starship engineers. As always, Mens didn't actually know the details of exactly how he was going to locate a single ship in the area the size of a cubic light year. He just knew that Raleigh would figure out the best solution, and that would have to be enough. Your cargo bays are loaded with random junk and about 200 decommissioned Wiakomi Corsair fighter bombers from the First Caldari Galente War, which won't raise much suspicion. When you reach New Eden, a series of nav points will register on your scanner. These are references for you to drive your computer to plot warp tracks. I hope you're prepared for a long trip. There are more than 600 of them, and each one of them is at least 100 AU warp. All told, you're going to take the scenic route through a light year of space. Your freighter is equipped with a prototype Propel Dynamics warp engine. Propel Dynamics is an interesting one to point out here, although I don't know if it's too much to read into it. I just know that Propel Dynamics is all about propulsion. They've been connected to Sisters of Eve. They're now part of Upwell. They're a critical piece to all of this. We could have a whole segment just on them. In fact, I probably have, but either way, we've got weird Propel Dynamic Warp Engine, which will go 25 AU per second, which every freighter pilot would be like, oh my God, please. 25 AUs. How the heck did you? Don't thank me, because technically you're a test pilot. Propel Dynamics needs to stress metrics, and you're going to beat the hell out of the drive for them. Unfortunately, there's no warranty if it happens to go Nova on your flight. Once you're a light year closer to Point Genesis, those junk Corsairs will spring to life. They're state-of-the-art Apex 11 warp container frontier drones in disguise, all with entangled comms, enough of them to work a border zone sector. They'll break into their preset search patterns, working towards Point Genesis and broadcasting your contact data to the significance. How long will it take? Anywhere from a few minutes to never. If that ship doesn't want to be found, we won't find it. They'll see us coming from far away. The captain probably dropped sensor buoys long ago. We're not sneaking up on it. Is our side of the bargain secured, Ben said. You mean our role in the assassination of a head of state? Yeah, that. A very good Ishikone pilot with good Ishikone equipment is standing by. The cargo is due in just a few hours. He doesn't know anything. Mens wondered if he knew who it was, then decided it was probably better if he didn't. What did all this cost us, Raleigh? A lot. Those Apex birds alone cost $500 million each. It's going to take some creative accounting to explain this to the board of directors. Seriously? Do you think that this is worth it? All we have is hope. Our conviction and the word of a sadist. I love our odds. We've got Heth right where we want him. One more thing. If you're stopped before reaching New Eden for any reason, self-destruct. You cannot be caught with this cargo. Despite all the pressures of Ishikone, all the dangers posed by Tibus Heth, and all the risks he was taking to mitigate both, the sad truth was that he hadn't been able to get Mila off his mind. For a moment, Lauren and Amelie seemed secondary. What began as something he thought he could ignore has metastasized into a potentially crippling obsession. It was uncharacteristic of him, and that made him nervous. Menz asks, has Mila contacted you with more information? And then Raleigh says, no, but I'd imagine she'd call you directly. Is that a bad thing? Well, it's not good for everyone. You know better than most that doing the right thing is usually difficult. Call me if you need me. Remember, Raleigh knows that Menz has conflicted feelings, complicated emotional feelings about Mila. So then he goes into warp. Then we cut from this to, in the next chapter, we jump to Lauren Repola stormed into the flat without warning, purposely making her way across the living space. Pack your things, she snapped, or I'll have a hired help do it for you. Just take the irreplaceable items. Where are we going? Amelie asked. Someplace far away from here, her mother answered. Amelie looked at the beefy bodyguards standing in the doorway. They kept their stone-faced expression. We're leaving home for good, she asked. You're serious? More than ever, Lauren said, grabbing the statue that Amelie knew she paid a small fortune for. I should have done this long ago. Did you talk it over with Dad? Amelie asked, folding her arms. You know this isn't working, Lauren says, marching straight past the projection of the family portraits above the credenza. She thrust the statue into one of the bodyguard's hands, who hurriedly stowed it into one of the luggage containers. Please don't fight me over this. Just gather your things and let's get moving. You made all the arrangements? Amelie demanded. The watch knows the itinerary, or is this selfishly irresponsible as I think it is? Yes and yes, which is why we need to hurry, Lauren said, snatching the ancient figurine from the pedestal. Responsibility works in both ways in marriage, and I lost my patience waiting for your father to reciprocate. So where are we going? We are eventually going to the Federation, Lauren said. We have friends there who will take us in. We can't do that, Amelie said. Not without a presidential pardon. It's done already, her mother said. More than happy to accommodate us. You can't do this, Amelie protested. Watch me, Lauren said. Dad promised to try one more time to work things out with you, Amelie protested. You owe him at least that much. With a startling crash, Amelie slammed the priceless figure into the floor. It broke into dozens of pieces, scattering it across the floor like flechettes of a grenade. I don't owe him anything, Lauren shouted. I am so sick of being told what I owe. What about what's owed to me? Why doesn't anyone ever ask that? Your father is a great man, Lauren said. He really is, but not for us. Right now, I need to do what's best for us. Not Ishikone, us. Amelie stared at her mother, fighting back some tears of her own. I can't blame you, she said calmly. I really can't. But tell me truthfully, does the watch know what you've planned? Yes, Lauren said. The watch knows. But does Raleigh know? Lauren wiped away tears. With all his tech, he can know anything he wants. He doesn't then, Amelie said. We'd have heard from Dad by now. I'm sorry for this, Lauren said. I'm just so tired of being afraid. I want us to reconnect. You're the only joy in my life. And for once, I'd like to enjoy that without the stress of trying to make a marriage work. If we do this, Amelie said, will you promise to give Dad one more try? Is this the last time you'll ask? Lauren said. If the effort is sincere, then yes, Amelie said. Dad promised the same. Fine, Lauren said. Just please, come with me. Amelie stared at her mother, certain that this was a bad decision. All right, where did you have in mind? Echelon Entertainment owns a property in Lone Trek, Lauren said. There's a secluded resort there that I'm quite fond of. Shorefront properties, just gorgeous. I plan to wait there until the Federation makes final arrangements for us. In any case, some rest and relaxation might be exactly what we need. What is the name of the world? Myoclar. So now we can see how this is all coming together. Menz is under orders of Hadakon sending a shuttle to Myoclar because there's a facility there. And also on the same planet, there is a resort that now Amelie and Lauren, his wife and daughter, are en route to. So now they're on their way. So ladies were about to depart, so they right on. So this is when she's drinking and she's very dismissive of buckle your seats. Flight time to Myoclar is about 40 minutes, the pilot says. Sit back and enjoy the ride. Hold on. Amelie, we've been planning this for months, her mother said. Try to let your hair down. It's time to have some fun. Months? Amelie asked. I thought this was a spur-of-the-moment plan. You're so naive sometimes, her mother answered. You should know by now how long it takes to set up security. Flight time to Malakar is about 40 minutes, the pilot said. Sit back and enjoy the ride. Oh, we will, Lauren said, handing over the overflowing glass to her daughter. Let's get on with it already. You're sure you've taken all the right precautions? Oh, come on, Lauren said with a dour look. I may have been a little emotional when I told you about this, but believe me, I would never do anything to endanger us. Everything is going to be fine. The 2 gunship escorts were taking them all the way in, and the shadow fleet of cruisers and frigates would be within warp range of their locations at all times between the station and the atmosphere. The men with guns and techs are waiting for us on the ground already. So even if your father was to find out, and I really don't care if he does, all of the measures that he and his whipping boy Raleigh would have prescribed are already in place. So just try to enjoy yourself, misbehave or something. Cut loose, have some fun. The ship lurched into the docking clamps released, and Lauren spilled wine all over herself. Amelie began to smile, then stopped herself. Turning her gaze towards the viewport, she resumed her worrying about the station's as the station's interior rushed by. Months was certainly a long time to plan anything, and it seemed probable that her mother covered the details well. It was the ethics of the situation that made her nervous. In the end, it was about being forced to take a side in a dispute between her parents. That was the main concern. Less the fact that what they were doing was irresponsible. Less so, she kept telling herself, because months, after all, gave bad people a long time to learn about things. And we get introduced to another character, Lieutenant Colonel Kaylin Leiden. This lady, for those of you who play EVE Galaxy Conquest. She had been a pilot for Ishikone Watch Protective Services Division for 5 years. From the beginning of her career there, she had been assigned to Mrs. Repula's personal security detail. During the time, she had developed a special respect for the family. Empathizing with their ordeals and unbelievable stress they faced, she cared deeply for their well-being. Although there were occasions when she thought that the security precautions were overly harsh, she had always understood the reasons for it. Which is why she could only shake her head at the debacle unfolding in her cabin, watching Lauren wipe the drink off her chin and laugh about it. On one hand, it was refreshing to see the woman enjoy herself for a change, but on the other, the hugely expensive security forces of Ishikone Watch were being used to aggravate a domestic dispute. This was outright irresponsible abuse of power, and that she could tell that the young Amelie thought so too as well. It didn't matter that the detail itinerary itself was professional, that they were bringing enough firepower with them to raise an infantry company. The fact was, Men's Repula didn't know about the excursion, and Lauren Repula had threatened a lot of people on the watch if they didn't play along. The worst part was that technically she had the authority to do this. It was part of the watch security protocols for emergencies. If Men's was ever in imminent danger of being captured by enemies of the Ishikone, Lauren was to leave with Amelie under protective services custody and not tell him where they were going. That way, information vital to their survival was isolated and couldn't be coerced. Needless to say, this hardly qualified as an emergency. Whatever, she told herself. Lauren and Amelia Repula were now her responsibility. Ishikone Watch starships had delivered them from here to the Echelon Entertainment Station, and it was her job to take them the rest of the way to the resort. Harbor Control, this is Vanguard 1. Vanguard? She declared on the military comms channel. It was time for the convoy to move, requesting permission to undock. Granted. Safe travels out there. Okay. So then, Hadakan is super happy. Hadakan could barely control her excitement. Today is the day, today is the day, today is the day that I kill him. Sung to the tune of a children's rhyme, the verse repeated in her head. Heth is going to die, Heth is going to die. Mordu, my love, will stab his heart. Oh, Heth is going to die. So yep, that's the plan. Right out there. She's got Men's to deliver Mordu guys in order to try to kill Heth. That's the plan. She even lied to Men's, right? Because she told Men's that she wants Heth to be reliant on her, when in reality, this whole plot was to kill Heth. The weekly meeting was moments away. The guard, which, by the way, Heth has a disease called the slow disease. Well, at least that's, I can't remember the actual name of the disease. It gets mentioned in a couple places, but like he can't be cloned. That's one of the whole things about this. So if he dies, he's dead. Oh, Tybus, you're going to think of me when you burn. The weekly meeting was moments away. The guards would call her and she would obediently follow, as she always had since becoming a prisoner in her own home. There was a cool breeze. Hadakan, the guard yelled, uplink in 5. Her fingers skimmed over the beloved plants as she walked towards the villa, all the while humming and twisting her twisted tunes to the guard. They gave her a datapad and guided her to the desk to await the feed of Tybus Heth in his cabinet. She was beaming. Today was the day. So then, this next section is the part, if we've talked about Templar 1 before, it's probably this next chapter, or this next section of this chapter. So in this moment, again, this whole idea of like they're they're bookending things with something in the middle that is relevant. So we saw that earlier with men's with Mordu in between to kind of let you in on what's going on here. We actually cut from her about to talk to Tibus Heth, which she thinks is going to be her victory. And we cut to Grius explaining to Marcus the truth about the Templars, the truth about the Sleepers, the truth about the Other, the whole 9 yards. That is this chapter right here. He's explaining the entire story of the ancient Jove, etc., etc. That is what's happening right now, and explaining the story of the Other and everything involving that. And then we cut right back to Haddokan and Heth. It's this climactic moment, and they pause to reveal this giant fucking lore dump. And then they're like, okay, great. Now we can just jump back to Haddokan and to Heth. I'm sure everything is fine. Good morning, Haddokan, Tibus says. Today is the day, she thinks. Where is everyone? She says. They'll be along, Tibus said. Because remember, she's expecting him to be at that meeting. She expects him to be in Myokar right now. She expects him to be down there with her Mordu guys coming in right as we speak, so that way she can witness Heth being executed by Mordu's men. That was her plan. And the thing comes on, and he's alone. Something might be wrong. Where is everyone? They'll be along. Nice work on these tax revenue forecasts. The estimates turned out to be spot on. He's very normal. How are you doing today? He asked. You seem a little distant. I don't know, she answered. I suppose the weather has me down a bit. That's not like you, he said. Maybe a fresh challenge will brighten your mood. I doubt it, she said, but a fresh sea breeze and a gorgeous tropical view would cheer me up. Like the sort you're privy to right now. She thinks he's at the resort. I'm not privy to sea breezes at the moment, Tibus said, folding his hands. There's been a change of plans regarding our summit venture. An icy lead ball formed in Haddokan's stomach. Really? She asked. You mean you're not at Echelon Villa? No, Tibus said, holding his glare. I'm afraid I'm not. And suddenly, this story becomes fucking Game of Thrones. Uh-oh, what's going to happen? But today is supposed to be the day. Oh, that's too bad, she said. It's so nice there. The view, the weather, there's going to be a view all right, he said, as he was replaced with the composite imagery of the venue site, grid maps of the surrounding areas, and the radar tracks of the airspace over the entire continental region. One red blip was about to enter the grid. I don't have much of an agenda today, Tibus said. So just sit back and enjoy the show. What exactly am I looking at here? She said. Where we're supposed to be right now, Heth said. It seems that knowledge found a wider audience than usual this week. I'm in the process of learning how that happened. For reasons that might not be obvious to you, you weren't informed. I'm sure you understand. Captain Linden watched the red glow envelop the canopy as the Vaunted plowed through the upper atmosphere as more than 7,000 meters per second. For the time being, he was out of radio contact with the tower below and Percone Station Harbor Control behind him. The ride, which has been smooth so far, was now starting to get bumpy. As soon as the glow dissipated, Myoklar greeted him with vicious wind gusts. Linden was slammed into his harness as the flight control systems for atmospheric flight engaged. This was a really bad storm, the worst he'd seen. The craft's intakes began sucking in good air, plenty of air molecules that could be ionized and vectored around the craft through magnetic fields for maneuvering. The 4 Propel Dynamics Warhorse Series LX-1000 plasma engines ignited, slowing the craft's descent just as the first updraft from towering thunderstorms struck the craft. Linden could hear unsecured cargo clanging in the hold where he was sitting, where they were several hundred kilometers away but closing distance quickly. He made the trip a dozen times and could name everyone in the tower by name. Good evening, Oxide Tower, he said. Ishikone 4 Able here. Tracking eastbound on your northwestern grid, Angels away, 20. Requesting a vector for spaceport 2 Delta. Normally there was some wisecrack reply from one of the shift's personnel, but now there was only static. Given the dangerous lightning storm he was flying through, that didn't surprise him, at least not too much. Ishikone 4 Able, an unfamiliar voice said. State your destination and cargo. Trevor said out loud. 4 Able inbound to your 2 Delta spaceport. My hold is filled with civilians and colony support equipment. What kind of equipment, 4 Able? The voice said. Another updraft current shook the craft violently. Red stall lights flashed briefly, and the flight controls struggled to maintain airflow around the craft. Tower, where are the usual guys? Captain Linden demanded. We're in bad weather here and need a vector to your spaceport ASAP. Do not approach 2 Delta, the voice said. You are cleared for 6 Bravo. Set your course for that grid and do not deviate. This, Trevor knew, was trouble. One way to check, and it was hardly foolproof, was to verify each other's identity. Tower, authenticate to Ishikone passcode challenge Romeo 9 Oxide, he says. For able, passcode answer is Victor 1 Mike, the tower replied. Come left 1 degree and proceed to your vector to 6 Bravo. The authentication passed. But Captain Linden knew that this tower. The guys would have laughed at him for going through the process in the first place. In addition, 6 Bravo had just opened and was reserved for liquefied gas transports. The tower was about 5 kilometers away from the Delta ports, completely isolated from the colony, never used, and didn't have any offloading equipment for vaunted class dropship. There was more alarms going off in his head than on his instrument panel. To bring the point home, lightning struck near the canopy, blinding him. He blinked away the greenish blobs in his vision. The craft was fine, but the magnetic nozzles were struggling to keep up. Auxiliary compressors embedded in the airframe had already engaged to support them. The craft was heavy and didn't handle well in the best of circumstances. Whatever he was going to do needed to be done quickly. Tower, that port isn't equipped to offload my gear, he says, buying himself some time to look over the map of the area. Request permission to land at. Denied, Foreable, they interrupted. Cleared for 6 Bravo. Do not deviate. The craft descended below the cloud ceiling, and Trevor lowered his thermal visor. There were 1,200 meters, and he could see both landing sites. Every spaceport was open, and there were vehicles he'd never seen before at 6 Bravo. Captain Linden looked at his fuel gauge and took a deep breath. Roger that, Tower, he said, checking his emergency alarm for passengers. He hoped they heeded the warning to get in their straps. Coming in nice and smooth on 6 Bravo. And with that, Captain Linden pointed his craft away from the colony and pushed the throttle as hard as it would go. He was pressed into his seat as several million kilograms of thrust rocketed him away from the landing site. He keyed the Ishikone Watch emergency channel on his comms. Mayday, Mayday, this is Ishikone Heavy Transport 4-Able inbound from Percone Station. We have been denied entry at Port Myoclara Colony. Can you assist? Over. The response was immediate. 4-Able, the watch reads you. We confirm that Ishikone personnel are not responsive. What is your location? 10 kilometers west of the installation. We're burning to put distance between us and looking to see a safe place to put down at least 200 clicks. Captain Linden's cold metal pressed against his neck. Felt cold metal. Don't move, a voice said. A hand reached forward to switch off the squawk box. Why didn't you land? The voice demanded. Trevor knew better than to remind the intruder that forced entry into the cockpit of a dropship was a crime punishable by death in the Caldari state. The tower didn't authenticate my passcode challenge, Trevor said. That's bullshit, the voice said, pressing his gun deeper into his neck. Turn the ship around. Fine, Captain Linden said, easing the control stick over, but I think you're making... Alarm klaxons filled the cockpit. A missile had been fired at them. Acting on reflex alone, Captain Linden wrenched the controls over and activated countermeasures. Several ECM canisters ejected from the vaunted, but the lumbering craft barely changed directions. What the fuck? The voice shouted. Linden threw the radio switch back on. Watch! Mayday! Mayday! Someone shot at us! He yelled. Please send help! We have civilians on board! Solid copy, 4-Able. Help is en route to your sector, the watch replied. Is there someone in the cockpit with you? The missile slammed into the countermeasures and exploded. The shock dissipated harmlessly behind them. Trevor tried to raise Ishikone Watch again, but they couldn't. We're being jammed, he said, reaching for the bay door's controls. I have to jettison cargo. Don't, the voice warned. Furious, Trevor turned around and saw one of the beefier-looking civilians. He had shoulder-length hair with forearms that stood strong enough to rip off his head. Trevor had no idea it was Moria Mordu's son. But given the circumstances, he wouldn't have even cared if he did. I don't know who the fuck you are, Trevor growled, but we're going to die if I don't drop that cargo. Fine, the assailant said, lowering the gun. I'll help. The bay door opened and the cargo worth hundreds of millions of credits began tumbling out. Relieved of so much mass, the craft buoyed upward as the second missile exploded. Fragments ripped through the hull and the craft's number 3 and 4 plasma engines erupted into flames. The craft yawned violently, but Captain Linden took a huge risk and increased throttle, vectoring the port nozzles in the opposite direction to straighten the craft out. Hydraulic air brakes fully extended to slow the craft's forward velocity. The craft's yaw corrected, but they had begun descending quickly as the reactor quit, and the craft's capacitor reserves began draining quickly to keep the intakes, compressors, and magnetic nozzles running long enough to stabilize its flights. He didn't need the craft's flight computer to tell him that they couldn't stay airborne for much longer. You want to live, strap in, Trevor warned as the craft approached the jungle canopy. The beach clearing he was aiming for was just 400 meters away, but he knew he couldn't make it. He slammed the craft's emergency broadcast beacon and prayed the Ishikone Watch was already looking for them. This is going to hurt, he muttered, as the tree chops rushed towards them. Nicely done, Tybus admired. watching the Ishikone dropship crash into the jungle. Those Sirmas are nasty, aren't they? He was referring to the very stealthy fighter aircraft that had been following the dropship since its entry into atmosphere, completely unbeknownst to the Ishikone pilot. Hadakan had hoped that they were all dead, but the takedown was obviously designed to avoid that. Targeting them in the air was preferable to a lengthy standoff on the ground, with armed mercenaries who always had the option to taking their own lives rather than being captured, and the EMP strike would have made the craft fall out of the sky like a stone. Whomever the fighter pilot was had to cripple the Vaunted just enough to allow it to control its descent. Heth clearly knew what they were doing, and Hadakan knew that Mordu would never send his boys into a grinder like this. That means Men's Repola had either gone against his word or somehow fucked up the operation. It didn't matter which. Of all the people who could have pulled this off, Repola was the only person she knew for certain despised Heth enough to try. Without Men's Repola, she was never going to escape imprisonment. This was her last chance. The flaming wreck on the ground proved it was gone. She snapped into survival mode, relishing the chance to strike back. Of course, we're going to recover the cargo he dropped, Heth continued. Maybe a few survivors as well. What corporations owned and or operated that gunship? She asked. You mean you don't know? Heth asked. Time is wasting, she said. Who? Ishikone is the owner and operator, he asked. My information is that a team of assassins were on board. She decided to play in Heth's paranoia. There's a dropship in the vicinity that she knew was very dear to Men's Repola. How good is your information? She asked. Is the source reliable? As reliable as they come. But is it thorough? Whatever you're getting at had better impress me, Heth warned. Show me a map of Echelon Villa, she said, and zoom out to 100 kilometers. All right, Heth said, as the imagery transformed. The villa is there, in the caldera. The Ishikone Company is 80 kilometers away, separated by steep terrain and jungle. If you think that there were assassins on board that dropship that you just shot down, they would have had to walk there, hauling lots of kit with them. Which I'm sure we'll find in the cargo dump, Heth said. Right. But what about this site here, she says, pointing to the resort. It was 100 kilometers in the other direction, a trendy getaway spot owned by Echelon, with a spaceport equipped to handle heavy dropships ferrying the rich and famous, or a squad of well-trained mercs could make that hike in 12 more hours than it would take to reach it from the colony. Heth remained quiet, holding his stare. There must be a radar track of ships in the area, she continued. If there are Ishikone dropships en route to the sector, then there remains the possibility of a contingency plan for whoever sent those assassins. There are several Ishikone-registered dropships en route to Myoklar, Heth said. One is tracking directly towards the resort right now. Well, Hadakan said. How thoroughly did you say your sources were? Heth's expression turned to anger. I mean, really, she continued. Given what we've just seen, and what we're likely to find in the jungle, what are the odds this second dropship is just carrying tourists? She knows what is happening. It even says right here that there was a dropship in the vicinity that she knew was very dear to Men's Repola. She's decided that Men's Repola fucked up this opportunity, and so she's going to punish him. And she leads Heth to identifying and targeting the shuttle that is en route to Echelon Entertainment. Raleigh, Ishikone Watch Commander Boris Akala said, we've got a situation. He had been plunged into his private research neuronet, using it to focus on the optimizing search patterns for the Apex drones looking for the significance. One of our dropships were just shot down over Myoklar. Captain Akala said, the pilot issued a mayday before his signal was jammed. Armed search and rescue efforts are en route to look for survivors. Raleigh realized immediately. Send in company-sized mechanized units and salvage team, with fleet support in orbit. Sir, the Caldara Navy has ships in the area now as well. Send them. Yes, sir. Be advised, the confrontation with Heth's forces is likely. The state is warning all dropships not to approach the planet. Any who refuse will be shot down. I see two of ours heading there, he said. The one that was shot down, and a second, a resupply ferry en route to Echelon Resort? That raised an eyebrow. It was being escorted by 2 watch gunships. Why would a supply ferry heading there need armed escorts, he asked himself. And then he saw the flight log had been electronically forged, and that the location finder for Menz's wife and daughter had been switched off. A sickening wave washed over him. "Commander," Raleigh said, "where exactly are Lauren and Amelia Repola?" "Ladies, we're about to deorbit," Lieutenant Kalen Linden announced. "For your protection, please fasten your safety harness. Amelia Repola has never taken her off, and Lauren Repola was very drunk now." Lieutenant Linden switched off the video feed. It was too difficult to watch. They'd been on ground. They'd be on ground in a few minutes, and she felt like she needed a shower. There were so many things wrong with the scenario that she felt filthy. The cockpit was filled by the greenish-blue gem of Myoclar. The approach was lined up. They'd be hitting the atmosphere in just a few seconds. "Vanguard 1, this is Hawkeye," the radio erupted. "Abort your descent! Repeat, abort your descent!" A Caldari Navy frigate warped in from 10 kilometers out. "All dropships have been warned to stay above Myoclar," the radio screamed. "Abort! Abort! Abort!" Before she could comprehend what was happening, antimatter slugs vaporized the gunships on either side of her. She was confused. No hostile ships were registering on her scanner, just Caldari Navy frigates, which didn't have any reason to fire on her. Her last thoughts were of her brother Trevor, and of Amelia Repola, brave girl that she was, who had the smarts to strap herself in properly. The comms traffic in the Tsukuras system had gone off the charts. It was like watching the seismograph of the Trembler in real time, a flurry of tremors leading up to the big shock that changed the landscape forever. Velamo was attempting to penetrate the encryption, but had no luck. It continued feverishly trying to do so. Mila had thought to reach out to Raleigh to see if he knew what was happening, then thought better of it. He would be too busy. Same with Menz. She had an awful feeling that something terrible had just happened. But before Menz can even find out about what has happened to his wife and his daughter, he's busy focusing on the significance. I'll be damned, Menz thought. Hadakan was right. One of the Apex probes had found something, or rather, something had found it. The message was a celestial grid coordinates. One dead reckoning warp plot, and he'd be within 100 clicks of the significance. There was nothing else in the message. He thought that Raleigh would have contacted him by now to celebrate or to offer some advice. No doubt he was seeing this data as well, but he didn't. And Menz still wasn't entirely sure what he expected when he warped there, or what he had paid to find it. Oh, all right. So then, at this point in the story, it focuses very much on Pike's Landing, the fighting with the Templar, everybody kind of showing up to deal with that. So this is like kind of we're now getting to the climax of the whole story. We get back to Menz a little while later, and he is back in the Fasala system with his daughter. Menz sat directly across from his daughter's ICU bed, focusing only on her. There was other people in the room with them, but they seemed distant and utterly irrelevant. This is like, again, it's a movie. This is like Act 2, Act 3, right? This is the moment of greatest tragedy. Everything's fallen apart. Everything's on fire. And all that's left is the broken and destroyed body of his daughter. Random snippets of conversations penetrated the haze, but Menz couldn't bring himself to absorb it all at once. Watch personnel are securing the crash site. The machines keeping her alive were too numerous to let him get any closer. Physical contact was out of the question. Teams had made heavy contact with Templist Dragonar mercenaries. Fragments of the disintegrating gunship had punctured her life pod, causing an explosive decompression from the air pressure inside. Emily had vented directly into space for almost 90 seconds before an Ishikone watch cruiser could recover the pod. We had taken and inflicted casualties. Doctors had informed him that the force of the injection had broken most of the bones in her body. This was not due to mechanical failure on the gunship's part, but the fact that the antimatter rounds were still slamming into the craft as she ejected. The force at play during the event was catastrophic. The Provosts aren't on the surface, nor any Caldari Navy troops. She was unconscious before the pod was vented. This, the doctor believed, probably saved her life. Had she attempted to hold her breath, the natural panic reaction of sudden vacuum exposure, her lungs and thorax would have been overexpanded due to excessively high interpulmonic pressure, ripping her lung tissue and capillaries apart. Bad weather at the crash site is helping by slowing their advance. Of all the things that she might have died from, the air embolism would have been the cruelest fate. There had been no way to find the blockage in time. No question that these are Heth's people. Her body was completely catatonic when they found her. Deep puncture wounds were apparent in the left side, where the breach was. Ishikone watch physicians had to stabilize her inside of the damaged life pod directly in the cargo bay before she could be moved to intensive care. She died twice along the way. Both times they were able to restart her heart. We recovered a tactical nuclear weapon from the wreckage. So that's what they had. They had a nuke. Lauren's life pod had ejected in time and was recovered. She was not inside. Mordu is frantically trying to reach you. Her body was never found. Neither that of her dropship pilot, nor those of the 2 gunship escorts. Please say something. Amelie's left arm and leg had to be amputated. Doctors gave her 1 in 6 chance to live. They say her will to live was remarkable. I am so sorry. Men snapped out of the haze as irrelevant people left the room. Someone began sobbing nearby. It was Raleigh. They were my responsibility, he said. Men's tried to answer, but a coarse wheeze came out of his throat instead. I let them slip right through, Raleigh said. There is no excuse. It's not your fault, Men's managed. It is my fault, Raleigh protested. I should have seen this. Don't, Men's growled. Save the grief for later. Right now you need to figure out how to make this worth it. Understand? Otacon was right, Men said. That bitch about the significance, about everything. She was fucking right. The technology is real, Men said, rubbing his eyes. He was glowing in the fresh skin of a new clone, but his eyes were bloodshot and sullen. Oh yeah, he pods himself back, by the way. Amar has immortal soldiers. They're building an army of them. Upon hearing the fate of his family, Men's returned up to Caldari space instantly, as only an immortal can, by self-destructing his ship. The body that left for New Eden system many hours ago was turned to ash. He awakened in an Ishikone crew. Marcus Jor, look him up in the archives, Men said. One of Amar's brightest scientists. He was aboard the Significance. Told me the prototypes had already been deployed. I know where to find them, Men said, wiping tears away from his forearm. We're going to take one. You're going to reverse engineer it, and then we're going to burn the whole state down. Raleigh's jaws was wide open. But how? Even with the intact live specimen. I don't care how, Men said. You'll find a way. Will I? Raleigh says. This isn't my... Marcus told me that they're on Pike's Landing. Men's interrupted. Amamake system. We're going after him. Men's, considering what you're asking, Raleigh pleaded. I'm not asking, Men said. We're doing it. That planet was just taken by the Amar Empire. How do you think they did it? Men's growled. 3 years of war and a handful of immortal soldiers knock it down in minutes. You'd be attacking a Caldari ally in the Imperium War. Ishikone doesn't have allies, Men says. It's not our goddamn war, remember? Think about what you're saying, Raleigh pleaded. You can't deal with both Heth and the Amarians. We're immortal, Men said. What do we care? What about everyone who isn't? Raleigh nearly shouted. You're not yourself. This is just too much to process. Men stood and took his friend forcibly by the shoulders. Heth knows we tried to kill him, he thundered. The diplomacy is over. You don't know that, Raleigh protested. He's sent in Dragonars, not government troops. That means he's not sure what he'll find in the jungle, or that he's confident with the intel that tipped him off. Men's let him go. He can distance himself from all of it, Raleigh continued. Even what happened to Lauren and Amelie. That was no Navy ship that shot him down. What? Also Dragonars, Raleigh said. Using a stolen Navy ident. The pilot of Lauren's ship wouldn't have realized it until it was too late. Heth just murdered half my family, Men said. Are you seriously suggesting that we exercise restraint? Raleigh threw his hands up. I don't know what to suggest, but declaring war on the Amar Empire isn't what I had in mind. Men's grabbed the chair and raised it above his head, moving it to smash it on the ground. He stopped himself, mindful that his daughter was still struggling for her life just meters away. I have nothing left, he said. I'm done acting like a fucking coward. You're no coward, Raleigh said. Quite the contrary. I haven't done anything to prove I'm not, he interrupted. Not yet. This is probably my last call as Chief Executive Officer, so listen carefully. I want you to ready the fleet. Emergency deployment orders. Mobilize like we're being invaded. I don't care how much noise it makes. I don't care who asks what we're doing. We are going to Pike's Landing, and we're bringing hell with us. All right, Raleigh says. Let's start preparing. Everything's focusing on Pike's Landing. This is where the deployment of the Amarian Templars are, including Vincent, the main Templar, Templar 1, that this entire book is about. So there's a lot of stuff that happens on the ground. We're going to kind of skip through a lot of this stuff. Jamil reveals the presence of the clones to the rest of the heirs. So there is some stuff about this scene, but we might have to revisit it in a later episode. But for now, we're going to kind of skip over this. This is when Marcus contacts her to let her know that everything is bad. As a little bit of an aside, we're going to read this part, which is Mordu knocked an empty bottle of whiskey off his desk while lunging for the datapad. The caller's source was unknown. Dad, Aaron said. Son, Mordu said, I can't believe I'm hearing your voice. Disappointed? Arian asked. No father could ever be, Mordu answered. There was a pause. Ishikone saved our lives. I know they did. Another pause shorter than the last one. This thing between us isn't over, Arian said. But there's a lot happening here. The Watch, Ishikone, they're mobilizing fast. Like they're getting ready to... The connection abruptly dropped. Hadakan Orietsu had taken her revenge, but strangely, this time, it failed to satisfy. She believed that Menzrepla needed to be punished. The remains of his loved ones were probably scattered all over Myoklar by now. He deserved it because he had dangled freedom before her eyes and then snatched it away. That cruelty deserved to be matched in kind. Or did it? She wondered. In her minds, Menz and his lapdog rally were far too competent for this to have been a clumsy botch. More likely, it was a calculated risk. They wagered that they could take her offer free of risk, but even if this assumption was wrong, the penalty for dishonoring their agreement, regardless of reason, should have been no less severe. Maybe it didn't have to be, she thought. Her doubt was growing because of the tactical aftermath of her actions were now almost impossible to navigate. With no options remaining, she considered the possibility that her reaction had been too impulsive. But the uncharacteristic of her. She searched her soul for the cause, wondering if her rage was fueled by her heading, and sensor information all appeared in the fueled by her failed relationship with Mordu. So she, okay, so apparently Hadakan has a failed relationship with Mordu. Okay. His son has most likely died, and for nothing. Though it appeared that some passengers had survived and that Heth's Dragonars were completely underprepared for the ferocity of Ishikone's response. So she thinks that she got Mordu's son killed. But Mordu's son survived and gave credit to Ishikone for saving his life. So not exactly what she's calculating. Nonetheless, chances were he was dead. And that was good enough reason to hurt Men's back, wasn't it? A bridge was burned and a powerful potential ally was lost. She tried to count how many friends she had left and found herself struggling to remember if she even had any to begin with. Money could always buy more, except now there wasn't much of that either. So this is what regret feels. The Provost guards were standing much closer to her than usual. Heth remained on screen, tracking the aftermaths of events, belittling the incompetence of hired guns while keeping the Navy's inquiries at arm's length. He was in his military element again, playing the general he thought himself to be but never actually was. Megacorporations' armed forces were anxiously trying to get information, but Heth was keeping quiet, except to say that the serious attempt on his life had been thwarted, and that under no circumstances were they to let the press find out. The events set in motion at Myoklar were now spiraling out of control, and no one could make sense of the chaos, no one except for Hadakan. Judging from Ishikone's reaction, it was clear that Menz had found exactly what she said he would. Fleet Admiral Morda Engen, the highest-ranking military officer of the Caldari state beneath Tibus Heth, was now conferenced in. Oh, Morda! I didn't grab her picture. I didn't realize that she was going to be mentioned. She's also in Eve Galaxy Conquest. Ishikone has achieved maximum wartime readiness, she said. They've invoked national security protocols with 25% of their population converted to active reservist status. Have they answered your queries? Heth asked. No response, the Admiral said, from anyone. All right, then, Heth said, balling his hands into fists. I think that we might have a fight coming. So they think that he's getting ready to fight Heth when he's really getting ready to go invade Pike's Landing. I'm not so sure, the Admiral said. We're analyzing their mobilization. They're planning to attack against this. If they were planning attacks against the state, their logistical patterns make no sense. The ship's movements were tracked to suggest that they're actually preparing to leave Caldari space through the southern regions. The south? Heth asked. Yes, towards Amar space. But that doesn't make any goddamn sense. No, it doesn't, the Admiral said, narrowing her eyes at him. But knowing exactly what happened at Myoklar might provide some insight into their motives. You'll know when you need to. Heth growled. Fair enough, she replied. I realize Ishikone is a thorn in your side. Don't let him goad you into a civil war. Point noted, Admiral. That'll be all. As the Admiral image vanished, the dictator turned his icy glare back to Hadakan. You've been awfully quiet, he said. That's the end of that area. Oh yeah, so like everybody's showing up here, right? Like everybody sent their navy here and all that stuff. So there's a Nyx supercarrier. The Nyx supercarrier was under fire from several Apocalypse-class battleships. Mordu was kindly tied up with Brokoff to assist. The Nyx would have a much bigger problem to contend with. Commander Mordu, this is Admiral Elijah Freeman, came the reply. State your intentions. My intent is to form an alliance. Coordinating our efforts would be advantageous. Commander, your fleet is harboring a Federation traitor. I'm not inclined to cooperate. You must be referring to Corvin Lears. He's one of the finest officers I've ever met. Sounds to me like he had good reason to disobey orders. Blah, blah, blah. They go back and forth. Mordu tactical display erupted with even more chatter, above and beyond the cries for help in his own fleet, as nearly 300 new contacts warp into field, almost directly on top of the Admiral Friedman's fleet. Every single one had Caldari state ident signatures. What the fuck? Admiral Friedman shouted as collision alarms sounded throughout the bridge. His immediate thought was that Mordu had somehow betrayed him, that this was quickly discounted when he realized that these were all Caldari ships. He next believed that this fleet was the Caldari Navy coming to the assistance of the Amar, but instead of targeting him, the Armada charged directly past, blasting through the Imperial ships on its way and rushing forward to establish position over the colony. The fleet, he finally realized, was comprised entirely of Ishikone Watch ships. 16 Waverin-class supercarriers were now in the battle. One of them began hailing him as the glow of 6 engines passed over the Nix forward runway. GFS Passaic, this is Chief Executive Officer Mens Repala of Ishikone. We have no quarrel with the Federation Navy or the Galente Federation. We are acting independently of the Caldari State, Tibus Heth, and the Caldari Navy. You are in no danger from us. I repeat, you are blue to our fleet. To demonstrate our goodwill, we are going to assist you in your operations against the Imperial Navy. A barrage of directed railgun fire obliterated an Imperial Abaddon-class battleship targeting long-range fire with the Passac. A second volley annihilated its cruiser escorts. I do have one request, though, men said. Admiral Freeman saw a pair of Phoenix-class dreadnoughts warp into the gauntlet, not 100 kilometers from where the Mordu Legion battlecruiser Morse was positioned. Please do not interfere with our surface operations, Mens continued. We are aware that the Federation troops are on the ground. They must not enter the core Freedom perimeter. Doing so could cause confusion that leads to unnecessary casualties. The Phoenix began deploying fleets of dropships. Ishikone Watch was invading Pike's Landing. Mens, thank you for the assist, Admiral Freeman said. But he had to buy time somehow. You've certainly given us a lot to think about. Stand by. He notified Eagle One. He noticed that Eagle One was frantically trying to reach him and switched channels. Go ahead, Eagle One. Make it fast. Commander, we're the 388 Division moving towards the core Freedom. We have high assurance that the HVI we spotted earlier is your target. How do you know? Because there's no way a man walks away from the carnage that we saw. The whole thing was caught on gun camera. You have the footage of Warcom to see for yourself. Immortal or not, those HVIs were using the toughest biotech I've ever seen. You know where he is? Just breached the colony perimeter, he said. We've got fast movers tracking him, but he's busy dodging SAMs. Keep your eyes on him, but slow your advance west, he said. Ishikone Watch is dropping 2 divisions into the elevator terminus. Who? So Ishikone Watch shows up. Jackus concluded his press briefing and left the podium, exiting through the hallway leading to the Federation Hall of the Ready Room. Grand Admiral Ranshell was awaiting from him inside, along with Director Longname and Black, all of them having followed his communications with Admiral Freeman. They all erupted at once. Why the hell didn't you send down the entire division? Admiral Ranshell roared. Could you be any less discreet about this? Oh, why the hell did you send down the entire division? You let both suspects in the disappearance of my men go free, Director Black said. And you're assuming too much from entirely circumstantial evidence, Director Avinur moaned. You're committing us to war on a personal whim and broken our most delicate foreign policy that we have. Jackus glared at all of them for a moment and then cleared his throat. All of you leave the room, now. What is this, some kind of joke? Admiral, either get into the ship that protects this nation's borders or send me your resignation, Rodin snapped. While you're deciding, get out of my ready room. Same for all of you. Out. So he kicks everybody out, including Black. And then he messages Admiral Freeman. Please ask Moria and Mens Repala if they'll join me for a conference. Tell them it's personal. Jackus waited, mindful that everyone in the office was staring at his cabinet member arguing outside the ready room. All right, Mr. President. We have Commander Repala and Mordu listening. Thank you, Jackus said. Gentlemen, we have a history of shared interests. The Federation is here because we recognize our threat to national security. So time has come to become clean for our reasons for coming to Pike's Landing. Just among us, no one else. We contribute to each other's goals, he continued. So I'll speak first. We have reason to believe that the Amar have deployed Immortal soldier technology on Pike's Landing. We lost contact with the team sent in to investigate. We sent more troops to recover them. During this operation, we made contact with the prototype and are actively tracking his movement as we speak. Mr. President, Menzripala said, you are aware that I am acting independently. Tyvis Heth has nothing to do with this. Yes, I understand, Jackas said. I have detailed schematics of the tech, Menz said. We haven't had time to analyze it yet, but the source is reliable. We're here because we need the prototype to help reverse engineer it. Doing so in the shortest time frame possible is the utmost urgency to Ishikone. We have no intention of profiting from it. Understood, Jackas said. Now, why is the Legion here? We made contact with the prototype, Morty said. One of our mercs knows the man personally. We're attempting to recover him now, with the intent of developing the technology ourselves. So we're all here for the same thing, Jackas said. But to what end? Deterrence or aggression? Amar had done enough to leave its mark on history, Morty said. I won't let them paint our future in gold. Heth will destroy Ishikone, Men said. I need this technology to defend it from him. And I can help you both, Jackas said. If the government objects, then I'll bring assets of Rodin shipyards to bear on this matter. So how do we help each other right now? Menz asked. Simple, Rodin said. You have the blueprints, I know where the prototype is, and Mordu has the best chance of capturing him alive. If we get him, Mordu asked, what happens then? We start the research, Menz said. I own a facility in Nullsec. It's secure. Including me, there are 3 people alive who know where it is. I can make arrangements to have your personnel brought there to participate in research, on the condition that its location remains secret. I agree to those terms, Rodin said. So we have a joint venture now. How do you know that everyone will honor their word? Mordu asked. We don't, Rodin said. But we have no reason to distrust each other now. Fair point, Morty said. I'm in. Done, Men said. Where's the prototype? Admiral Freeman is now authorized to disseminate that information, Rodin said, glaring at his incompetent cabinet through the glass. I'll leave the tactical collaboration work to you. Work together, gentlemen. You need to be on your best right now. Good luck. So, the conspiracy is Rodin, Mila, Harakan, Mordu, Ishikone. Am I missing anybody? Maybe? I think that's it so far. Oh yeah, and now there's an avatar. Where is it? I don't remember where that pops in. But now a Titan gets brought in and is shooting the people fighting in space. So the Admiral Freeman watched helplessly as another judgment beam lashed out from the Avatar and destroyed one of his dreadnoughts from 250 kilometers away. A lot of people died today, and he wasn't sure why. Commander Repala, I just lost half of my towing capacity and have a mechanized division stranded on the surface. That Titan is murdering everything in low orbit. We'll get them back, Men said. But it would go faster if you focus on personnel and abandon the equipment. Whatever it takes. I've been trying 4 times to swipe away that black smudge from the phone screen. Are you talking about my Megathron model? Alright. Gentlemen, we have him, Mordu interrupted. My team has made contact. The HVI is cooperating. We can start pulling back, but they need extraction. The LZ is hot. Where are they? Blah, blah, blah. The HVI is in a Guardian Tech MTAC. We're not leaving until our team is off the surface, Mordu said. Your call, Men said, but you need to trust us. They're left in a pretty dire spot. The Guardian was still facing down away from it, the guns blazing, and despite the fact that it was on fire, the cockpit opened and Vince jumped down and the machine walked itself into the withering barrage of beam fire. As it collapsed and exploded, the ramp began to lower on the gunship. Masked men emerged with rifles as a pair of turrets spit out streams of plasma into the night. Mac had made it. He set Gable down inside. Jonas smiled, thankful that his crew was safe, and let his head fall into the dirt. But he was yanked upright. He was being carried through hell towards the open ramp. His legs were no longer working. Turning his head, he could see Vince. My God, what did they do to you? He wondered. The man barely looked like his old self, with flaps of crimson skin hanging from a face that was ghastly pale. This is the Templar 1, by the way. Jonas struck the ground again. Mac, also prone, was staring at him from just inches away. Blood was flowing through his nose, and deranged smile remained. His eyes were filled with sadness. His mouth moved to say something and then stopped. The last words Jonas heard belonged to Gable. God in heaven, please, she begged. I can't save them all. So here we have the last we see of Hadakan. The Forge region, the Poignan system, Planet 4, Moon 26, Internal Security Assembly Station, Sovereignty of the Caldari State. So it's Khanid technology, eh? Tyba said. Does it work? You're not concerned about her well-being? Then yes, the scientist said. His wrists were exposed prominently, displaying the tattoo of a Templar Dragonars. The Amar use it to reclaim their inmates. But in the right hands, it can be used to walk into any part of her mind and extract information, usually at the expense of leaving the victim ruined. Hadakan, dressed in nothing but undergarments, sat with her arms bound behind her, her head listed from one side, with eyes unfocused and a blank expression on her face. She hadn't uttered a single word in days. Heth glared at her for a few moments. "So you're a masochist now," he said. "You know I'm going to find out everything anyway, right?" Her eyes remained blank as drops of urine began falling from the chair. "Fine," the dictator said. "The hard way it is." He looked at the scientist. "She's all yours," he said. "Keep me posted." "Of course," the scientist said, kneeling in front of her. "Hello, Hadakan," he said. "My name is Dr. Zahn, and I'm going to be your new mind warden." He ran his fingers through her hair, grabbing a handful. "I'm rather looking forward to it," he said with a smile. "Aren't you?" So Hadakan, at the end of this story, is in a very bad place. She is now fully Hess prisoner and is in the hands of a Templars Dragonars dude who's using Khanid technology to mess with her brain. That is not a great place to be. It is worth noting that Hadakan, years later, when Heth is deposed, when Heth is gotten rid of, she actually regains control of the Calikiota Corporation. In fact, if we go into game right now, as of right now, Hadakan Oryitsu is the CEO of Calikiota Corporation. So between this event and later, she obviously gets away and whatnot. We're going to follow that what happens to her and everybody else is going to be a big part of what's going to happen in part 2 of this story. But then we also have the meeting of Mordu at the Molnir Nebula. So that secret facility that the Templar was taken to, that all this stuff was happening, that's Mila's facility. The facility that's ran by the Velamo AI and is where Mila has been hiding. That is the place that they bring all this stuff to begin their research on the cloning technology. "I'm impressed by what you've built here," Mordu said, if not somewhat unsettled. Lurking in the shadows, drones were following him everywhere he went, always within striking distance. And those were just the ones that you could see. "First the broker, now Heth," Men said. "I trust machines more than people now." "You don't really mean that," Mordu asked, "do you?" Men's flashed a brief smile. "You can come here whenever you like," he continued, leading Mordu down a hallway. "The pickup location is random, never the same twice, and you must always come alone." Mordu followed the doors open in front of the Ishikone CEO. There were windows that showed the space outside, but all he could see was swirling dust. "A word of caution, though," Menz added, stopping before the final door and turning to face him. "If the drone suspects that it's being followed, one of two things can happen. It'll either stop wherever it is in space and eject you from the ship, or lead you to whoever is following you and whoever is following into something unpleasant." Mordu looked into Repala's eyes and for a brief instant recognized a much younger and tormented version of himself. "You saved my son's life," he said. We are with you." Menz looked away. "Thank you," he said. "We'll find out soon enough if you really are." And finally, as we're getting close to the end, we have the conversation between Amelie and Menz. "Mom's gone, isn't he?" Amelie asked. "Yes," Menz said, holding his daughter's hand. "I remember boarding a gunship. We were supposed to go to Myoklar?" Menz nodded slowly. "It was attacked during approach." "By who?" "Heth." "I wish I could remember what we were talking about," she said. "She loved you very much," Menz said. "It was a bad idea," she said, frowning. "I knew it then." No, Amelie. If anyone is to blame, it's me. Please, not you. The last memory I will ever have of Mom, that I didn't stand up to her. If I had, she might still be alive." Menz took a deep breath, because Amelie asked to be part of this, and now she is. And the very first thing that she has to confront when it comes to being part of this is the consequences to things. Both your own faults, but also the parts of it that you could never have known. Right? And in this case, her decisions or her actions led to her own mother's death. And that's step one for her when it comes to being an adult in this world, taking things on for herself. She'd been trying this whole time to bring this family back together. That's impossible now. And her attempts to got her mom, or, in her attempts, her mom has now died. Emily, remember when you told me that you wanted a more active role in protecting yourself? Yeah, Emily said. Well, you have it now, Men said. We're far, far away from Ishikone. Somewhere where Heth and the broker can't find us. This is where we're going to make our stand. By hiding from them? By figuring out how to beat them. Let me show you something. A tiny drone, no larger than a datapad, scurried up to the side of Emily's bed, sat on her lap, startling her. It's okay, Men said, as it playfully flipped onto its back and then righted itself and performed salute with one of its appendages. See? Put your hand out. She did so, and the creature reached out with one of its legs and touched her hand and then pulled away. It repeated the act again, as if judging whether it was safe, and then jumped into her palm, spreading out as though lounging on a couch. This is Velamo, Men said. Raleigh built him. Don't let his size fool you. He's quite capable, and soon you'll find out. Capable of what? Emily asked. Of teaching you how to protect yourself, Men said. When you're feeling better, there's someone else I'm going to introduce you to. But for now, are you going to be here? She asked. Men's took a big swallow. Raleigh will be here for a few days a week to continue your education. Dad, Emily said, are you going to stay here with me? As much as I can, Men said. And then so then he also meets up then with Gable, right? Gable, that doctor that is the life giver. And he has a meeting with her. How's the patient doing? Stabilized for now, Gable said, though I don't know how much I had to do with that. His anatomy is incredibly resilient. Is he cooperating? He trusts me, Gable said. He fully understands that we can't help him until we learn more about him. But there is one concern I have. What's that? His entire hippocampus and thalamus has been replaced by a cybernetic implant I've never seen before. And there's more technology I'm unfamiliar with. For example, I think his entire spinal cord is a transmitter of some kind. It probably is, Men said. He's a prototype. The technical specifications for his clone type will be here shortly. His normal body temperature is elevated already, and his back is almost hot to the touch. I'm guessing that it's still broadcasting. We'll look into it, Men said. Do you have everything else you need? Yes, this facility is state-of-the-art, she said. But the drones are very intimidating. They're for your protection, Men's explained. You know there are risks. I understand, and I appreciate it. My colleague, Raleigh, is very impressed with your background, Men's commented. You two are going to be working closely together. Oh, what's his background? His contributions to Ishikone are too numerous to count, but first and foremost, he is an engineer, Men said. The best there is. He can build anything, including the cybernetic technology that you might need to save Vince's life. That will come in handy, Gable said, folding her arms. Reverse engineering him sounds like quite the business opportunity. You're welcome to express your opinions, Doctor, Men said, but this work is important. Vince isn't the only one whose life is in danger. And then he meets up with Mila. When can I meet her? Mila asked. Soon, Men said, staring into the room where Amelie was sleeping. She needs some time. Velamo has taken a liking to her, Mila said, noting the drone sprawled out at the foot of her bed. That shouldn't be possible, Men said. I always thought he was built that way, Mila said. Velamo was built to learn and to hunt, Men said. The nurturing behavior is new. I'll have Raleigh look into it. You're asking a lot of him, she said. I ask a lot of everyone in my life. Taking one last look at his daughter, he turned and walked straight past Mila. Men's, she cried out. I'm sorry about Lord. Don't you ever say her name to me again, he growled. And that is the story of Men's Repola in Templar 1. The story of a man who had to make a decision, a balance between his family and his career, or his corporation that he runs. A decision that cost him his wife, but got him closer to his daughter. And we leave him in this story hiding in Mila's secret location with Gable and his daughter and Raleigh in order to reverse engineer the Templar project explicitly so that way he can build a clone army to fight Tibus Heth. And so next time, when we come back to this, we are going to cover the fall of Tibus Heth. And now that we've seen very intimately what motivates and what tools and resources Mens Repula has at his disposal, when we explore the downfall of Tibus Heth, I think that we will see his fingerprints everywhere and begin to finally put together this conspiracy that has been going on since at least this moment and goes all the way to today with Upwell, with Mordu, with Ishikone, with Laidai, etc., etc. So next time we will be going into the fall of Tibus Heth. But for now, we are left here at this very mysterious moment. But I'm left with one question. When does this happen? And I don't 100% know, but I have a very interesting theory that might give us an extra piece of information. Here's your tinfoil of the day. Here's my, wait a minute, hold on. Like, this is iceberg, low-level iceberg level stuff, now that we've been through all of this, okay? Well, Rodin, there's a few facts that we can use. I've tried to, like, there's no reference of Pike's Landing. If you search for Amamake in the New Eden News, there's all kinds of things that come up with Amamake, but nothing that seems to reference this. This system here, as you can see behind me, this is, by the way, the planet of Myokar. That, for those of you who, at the beginning of the stream, I mentioned, if anybody knows why I'm at this planet that I'm at right now is the planet of Myokar. This is where that attempted assassination happened. It's where Amelie and Lauren was hit, etc., etc. You know, that this is that planet, right? That's cool. So there is the whole thing. So there's 2 or 3 years past Templar 1, or sorry, Empyrean Age, right? There's a few things. One, Mentis Black is not a senator in this video, or in this conversation. In fact, if we go to Black, there's a conversation here where he calls it the director of the Black Eagles and former senator, but it's spoken as if this is relatively recent, and it's also spoken as if it's relatively recent where Rodin is now president. Okay, we also see this other information about Ishikone, and they say it's two to 3 years from the events of the Empyrean Age. So we're going to go. So here it is, YC 110, 0610. So 2 years would be YC 112, so 0610. And then we see that Mentis Black resigned on YC 112 414. So 2 years after that would be YC 112, which it's worth noting that Templar 1 was published January 3rd, 2012. So that'd be YC 114. So it's talking about events that are previous to that, for sure. So we have Mentis Black and his resignation here. And that would be in YC 114. Sorry, 112. My bad. That's YC 112. We're going to go back to YC 112 and go to the beginning of this. And we can see there's announced Senate resignation, nomination for new head of Senate. And so what's interesting here is that YC 112 has basically, it has all these things that happen in January, February, March, April of YC 112, which is 2010, has all these different things that happen, including Mentis Black resigns. Just before that, you know, this is actually when, Ishikone, or what, you know, a lot of these pieces are coming together including, where is it? Rodin. So Rodin is elected at the beginning of YC 112. And then 3 months later, Senator Black is now kicked out of the Senate. So the events of Templar 1 has to occur after YC 112. Okay? Now, if we go to the War Clone story, it says, the Amarr Empire, fearful of a potential insurrection of these powerful soldiers, decided to both resolve... Hold on. It began with inmate 487980A, a man of Caldari descent, prisoner held in Imperial Corrections Penitentiary 89 in the Hedion system of Marian Throne Worlds. Previously known as Vincent Barabin, a wanted fugitive of the state and former Caldari Navy serviceman, he began simply to be known as Templar 1. Blah, blah, blah. Based on biomechanical implant, colloquially known as the fifth lobe technology, harvested from dominant race known only as the Sleepers, the highly invasive surgical process transformed an individual into one of these paladins was described as Imperial scientists as one of the most brutal procedures that they've ever carried out, with a recovery procedure lasting several months. So it takes several months to do one of these things. Despite ongoing breach of the Concord Assembly's legislation regarding the cloning and sentient biomasses, these first-generation clone mercenaries were initially used to great effect at the Battle of Pike's Landing in the Republic system of Amamake. However, the vast majority of these mentally and physically unable to adjust to such severe changes in psychology and were driven mad by the drastic changes made to their physical and mental composition. The Amarr Empire, fearful of a potential insurrection by these powerful soldiers, decided to resolve both the issues of their presence and their evidence, their existence in one fell swoop. Their order was issued for an Imperial Navy strike force to carry out a full-scale orbital bombardment of both the battlefield at Pike's Landing and the Central Clone Reanimation Unit Enclave, ensure that no evidence was of what was now considered a failed experiment would exist should Concord Assembly investigate. The order was carried out with success, and on this day, the fate of Templar 1 remains a mystery to all who knew of his existence, except for we know where he's at. He's at the Molnir Nebula in Mila's headquarters. For a while, the project was believed to be a thing of the past. However, within a number of months, Imperial scientists, under decree issued by the Empress Jamila herself, had completed work on an artificially synthesized version of the implant grown entirely inside of a human clone and free from invasive procedures of the first-generation implants. With the ability to bypass the lengthy recovery process, the Empire set about creating a stock of second-generation clone soldiers within several months more. This technology had spread to the other core empires, with all four major powers working on their own answer to the Empire's new discovery. So this happens months after the events of Templar 1, okay? And we can go... There's a couple of chronicles that are important here. So we have Sirens of Fear and Sense, which is YC 115-0206. This is where the first image of 514 gets found, and this is like they're already talking about clone soldiers being integrated into all this. We're going to talk about this a lot tomorrow. This is going to be, or not tomorrow, but the next time. And then 514, this is when Jamil is presenting this information to everybody else, and this is after this event. So this would have been, so there's some time between (414) YC 112 and January 26th YC 115. So that is it's a 3-year window, so it's got to be somewhere in between there, right? But we also see it was not until November 30th YC 114, so this is actually before that, that the true power of these clone soldiers was revealed after Typus Heth, executor of the Caldari state, was shot by an assistant at a provost political rally in the city of Okashin on New Caldari Prime. It was rumored that this single individual, later revealed to be a clone soldier, dispatched over a dozen of Heth's most highly... Okay, so that's cool. So it has to be before that. We're going. That's basically spoiler alert for next time. But so we have between the middle of YC 112 and the beginning of YC 114. So it's basically, it has to happen in YC 113, right? Or the second half of YC 112 and the somewhere in YC 113. What's very fascinating about this to me is that YC 113 begins with a Sanchez incursion. This is actually the beginning of Sanchez incursions. Now, I've known that Sancha's incursions are somewhat connected to all of this, like, sleeper tech, and, like, these are kind of connected together. There's some interesting stuff with the infomorph and everything like that. But here's the thing about that. If we assume that that this resignation means that this is shortly before the events of Templar 1, then that means that Templar 1 happens during the second half of YC112. So the entirety of the events of Templar 1 would occur during this shadow period in the lore, where we don't have any chronicles at all, or any news stories at all. See, because like I said, we can go to YC112. We see, not 112. Yeah. Oh. Never mind, there is stuff in YC112. Oh yeah, sorry. Sancha attack starts in the late 112. So, the thing about the story, though, is that if you go into the actual Templar 1, and we search for Sancha, right? We find nothing. And so that implies to me that this story is happening before the Sancha's incursions. Because you would think, with everything going on here, someone would have at least mentioned that Sancha was up to something. So I think that there's good evidence to show that this event occurs between men's becoming, basically April and, so 419 is that, and then I've been wanting to find out, like, there is some, like, if you go, this is the whole thing that I was talking about. If you go read that conversation with Jamil with the rest of the elders, or heirs, there is some references to Artishipper doing some stuff, which tells me that it's happening around this time period, that 5-5, which is really critical. Really critical. Because if we see, this is when Sancha's Nation begins abducting people. 1 month later. Okay? So if this event, if Templar 1 takes place in April to May, YC112, this means something very, very interesting. Because, like, it could happen later than all of this, but it's important to note that in the final chapter of Templar 1, the very, 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 very end, see if I can pull it up. We have this. Just outside of the borders of Caldari space, hidden in the unremarkable asteroid belts of a system abandoned by prospectors long ago, lurked a series of outposts. The inside of these hardened structures were crammed with highly advanced technical equipment, usually the sort of stuff found in secure Empire stations. Vast data core centers linked to fluid routers, all still active, sat alongside cloning equipment, including crews with clones waiting inside. Curiously, lockers filled with neatly arranged garments of all manners of styles were also present, despite the fact that none of the more customary creature comforts associated with Common Research Center. In each of these outposts, everything was covered in dust. A sentient life form chanced upon one during a belt surveying mission and promptly informed its master. Within hours, its smaller companion had broken inside, not realizing how lucky that they were. A thermonuclear device powerful enough to atomize the asteroid upon which they stood had somehow failed to detonate following an unauthorized breach. Whoever had rigged it had made a mistake. It was one of the many the broker made towards the end of his physical lives. So what we see is that Sancha, because we see that's the Sancha logo up there, it would seem that Sancha is the one who stumbles upon the broker's cloning systems and information. And I've never really thought about that too much, but given the events that have happened, like, given all of this, it really does feel like this moment might have been the initiation of the Sanche's incursion. That whatever Sanche got out of this was part of the impetus that makes him begin the actual invasions. And there's even a discussion with Master Kuvaki. So here's my tinfoil for you today. Ready? We don't know if Master Kuvaki really is the original Master Kuvaki. Like, the current person claiming to be Master Kuvaki claims to be Master Kuvaki, but as far as we know, Sanche died. So who is this guy? So the question is was the broker's infomorph contained in this facility? And did the identity of the broker get assumed by the Sanche? And so is the new version of Master Kuvaki actually the broker? And that's why the new version of Master Kuvaki knows so much. Or if you really, really, really want to trip down the tinfoil, this one makes even less sense. What if the broker was Sanche in the first place? Like, Sanche survived, or Sanche's back. It could very well be that the broker was always Sanche. But then that doesn't really make sense, because this seems like this happening upon it was a mistake and an accident. So, but it is worth noting, it is very interesting that basically either right as Sanche is beginning his invasions or right before it, he happens to find the treasure trove of information and data that is the broker's caches. So that is it for today's story. We have a lot more to cover, obviously, when it comes to what Ishikone, Men's, Amelie, and all of them have been up to. That's one of those questions that have been bugging my head for this whole time. Today, we were able to... this is the foundation of the story. This was like Templar 1. This was the establishment of Men's Repala. And obviously, he, at this point, is now in charge of Ishikone. Heth is still in charge. Things are not great. Hadakan is captured, but he and his daughter are safe in hiding. And where that goes from here, we'll see next time. But that's it for today's episode. If you're watching live, stay tuned. If you're watching the edited version, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Actually, do that either way. But I will say that I have been Ashrathi. I've been playing this game since 2010, talking about it since 2012, and I'm here to put even into context for you, my fellow Imperians. Thank you guys so much for coming. We are about to do a Skinner giveaway. We do those only for the live shows, so you got to catch them live if you want to do that. But again, if you're watching this edited, I really, really appreciate it. And I do want to give a special shout out and a thank you to my top tier supporters: 745 MPSI, Arydanika the Queen, Bad Boy Smooth, Ebo Leet, Erladis, Elange, Flash Gordon, Grims, May, Malak, Starfire, Malin, Mercuton, Mayak, Morcar, Michael, Neelam, LM1, Sheesh, Susuro, Thrans, and Rid. Thank you so much. If you guys appreciated today's breakdown of this story and the work that went into it, make sure to like the video, share it with some friends, etc., because Men's Repala may be the secret to understanding pretty much all of the conspiracies in EVE Online if we dig deep enough. So hope that you'll see me next time. But until then, I've been Ashrathi, the voice of New Eden, and I'll see you in space.